I'd like to call to order this Verona Borough Council Workshop Meeting, January 25th, 2022. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Christine, can you take roll call, please?
Sure. Dave Matlin,
Present.
Joey Warren,
Present.
Reese Lechevich,
Present.
Sylvia Provenza,
Present.
Trish Redzik Showalter, Vince Flota, Rhoda Wharf,
Present.
David Recupero,
Present.
Chelsea Dice,
Present.
Christine D. Runk, present.
All right, thank you. I'm just gonna, a couple brief comments just on the format so everyone's aware. It seems like everyone is, but last meeting, we did opt to go to a Zoom only format for meetings going forward, given the rise.
Trish.
Yeah.
Trish, you live or you
You gotta mute if you're gonna log in. We moved to a Zoom only format given the rise in cases of COVID-19 in Allegheny County. Afterwards, we did understand that the Pennsylvania Borough Code requires a quorum of council members to be present in council chambers since the emergency declaration from the governor had expired during the pandemic. So that's why council and staff are present here in council chambers. But for the time being, it'll be Zoom only for the public, and we'll evaluate this on a meeting by meeting basis until the case counts drop back down. And so we'll update everyone via the website and normal channels if there is a change for future meetings. So with that, are there any emergency additional agenda items at this time from council?
No.
Nope. Okay. Then at this time, we will hear comments from the public on agenda related items only. Council will hear comments from the public at this time on agenda related items only. Please approach the podium or raise your virtual hand. Clearly state your name and address. Limit your comments to 3 minutes.
First on the agenda, we have Sarah.
Oh, no.
I think we're doing this part first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And then we'll move to Sarah.
Got it.
Yeah, so this is, we will get to the register. There is one registered comment, which we'll get to in a moment, but at this time, we're taking any new comments related to, from the public, related to agenda items only.
We have no virtual hands raised.
Okay. So with that, we will move on to the one and only registered comment for tonight for members of the public. And we have Sarah McGonigal, owner of Pittsburgh Event Studio, speaking about street closures.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sean McGonigal.
I'm Sarah McGonigal, but I'm losing my voice a little bit, so I'm going to let Sean do the talking. But we own the Pittsburgh Event Studio at 713 East Railroad Ave in Verona.
That's right. We love the borough of Verona. We think things are going great down there. We love the community and interacting with everyone that we see down there. So very positive about Verona. I tell everyone I know about it. Wanted to talk about something that impacts our business greatly, and I know a few other businesses on our same street, which is street closures for some of the events that we have. And we're very positive about Verona having events. Our main point is that it's difficult for us when the street and the parking is closed for these events. So just to give you a little perspective for our business, and other businesses are on there too, on our street as well. But for us, when a weekend gets shut down from us having these events, we lose about $1,700. It's $425 per event. We can have 2 per day. So closing the street does not allow us to have these events because people can't get to our space. People can't park in front. There's no parking for guests. And in general, we just prevent people from scheduling on those weekends that have events. So there's not a problem for us where we end up getting with bad reviews or bad service to people who come to try to have an event there. It also impacts wages for our cleaners for that week when we shut stuff down. This isn't specifically just about garden club events, but last year we had 6 weekends that we ended up losing from the street being closed and parking being closed down there. So that was a little bit of a financial difficulty for us. It was kind of unfortunate. And basically, we like the events. We're just trying to have events have alternatives to closing the street down. And I think that it should always be a rare exception when we close the street down. In general, we should not close the street down for events. And I think there's many other alternatives that we can use for events that does not rely on shutting down the street and shutting down parking for businesses on East Railroad.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd like to make a comment. I'm on the board of Chamber of Commerce also, and 25. Sorry, what?
Oh, sorry, I think we lost you there for a second, but go ahead.
For the last 25 years, we had a car cruise on there, on the back street. And this past year, we had 150 cars and over 300 people walk through the town. And they found parking. There's parking in the parking lot up here. There's parking on South Avenue on the hill. Across the tracks, there's parking. We've had Fall Festival where we, for 15 years, where we shut the street down. People found parking. We had over 1,000 people almost per night walk through this field over here with the road shut down. My personal feeling is we as a society, if we can't park in front of an establishment we want to go to, we're not going to go in there. They need to find their own parking. There's parking in this town. I believe you have a couple spots in the back of your place where people can unload and load.
No, we don't have anything.
There's nothing back there. I thought there was a little driveway back there.
No,
No, unfortunately not.
I think you're thinking of Halco, our next door neighbors. They have like a loading zone, but we have nothing on our property.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had the Christmas parade. I've lived here all my life, and
Are we recording?
hold on one second.
If members of the public, if you're not speaking, if you could please put yourself on mute, so that we don't have any feedback for everyone else trying to join in and listen. Thank you.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I think we missed the emergency. I don't think you guys see my hand raised.
Yes, it's James.
Yes.
The emergency agenda items were for council members.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. I didn't know I was unmuted.
Yeah, if you could please remain muted as a public member, yourself and others, we will actually attend to raise hands when we come up to that portion of the public meeting. Thank you.
You go again.
Yeah.
Okay, as I was saying, like the Christmas parade, there's 4 or 5 of us in here that were born and raised in this town, and we've always had a Christmas parade. And to say, hey, we got to move it, or we can't, have it on the back street to shut it down along with other activities. I mean, I don't know what the answer is. We have maybe 3-4 events a year where we shut the street down, and it brings people into this town, and that's what we want.
Yeah, no, we completely agree. We also bring people into the town too. And now I'm not trying to target the light up night with this. I think if it was just the light up night.
Or just the light up night in the car cruise.
Yeah.
But it seems like the trend as Verona develops is to have these events, bring people into the community. That's great. But when it closes down the street, 6 times in a year is every other month. And that wasn't probably as many events as could have been offered to the community.
Right.
So it could be once a month. And that's too much for our business to lose. We'll go out of business if we have to shut down. And so what we were thinking is, it's just, if we could brainstorm as a group on, are there certain events that could be moved? Like if you say, we can't move light up night, it's a safety issue, we're pretty reasonable, that makes sense to us. But could other events just be contained to the park, like the farmer's market? Never affects our business. It's just in the park. It doesn't close down the street.
Right. And they have food trucks that they just put up on the grass there, which is totally fine. And I'm happy that it brings people to the borough. I think that's amazing. And yeah, like I said, we're not trying to stand in the way of light up night. I respect the tradition. I understand there's a huge parade going on there. It brings in a lot of people. That's great. It's easy for us to plan on. We know that it's happening every year. But I think that we can agree maybe that the default should be that we don't close down the street or the parking. And then we don't even have to get into anything else on scheduling when that happens. We just know this, hey, they have two longstanding traditions. And we can put up with that. And it's well known way in advance that we can block off our schedule to support that.
Well, like I said, and I talked to Kevin Ewing from the Chamber of Commerce, and he feels the same way. I mean, we've had, our car crews for 25 years.
Yep.
There's other events that would like to, come into this time, like botany and booze. They just started. They've had very good success. My answer is, if you're having an event that day, you tell your clients to, come a little earlier, set up in front. I'll make arrangements for the cars to be pulled up there so they can load and unload. But like I said, we get people from all over. They find parking places. I mean, and that's my opinion.
Mr. and Mrs. McGonigal, would you like to share any more public comment as speakers at this point before we allow other peoples of council to address what you brought to the table?
Yep.
Yeah, I would just like to say that we're requesting that there be an application that's made public for street closures, so that people can be aware of who is requesting and when they're requesting. We found out through the grapevine about all of these events that are the extra ones. So Intergroove had a block party last year. We're finding out about botany and booze and their timeframes through the grapevine for this year. So a formal application process would be wonderful as a way to alert the community, give advance notice, but also if it's possible, we would like certain events to move to a different area. And I know that sounds a little, I guess, I don't want to stand in the way of Verona tradition, but it seems possible to move something like botany and booze, which is so good for the community and raise $10,000, to Verona Park, where it's not shutting down businesses and still able to really support the community.
That's right. Yeah, like we said, the farmers market finds a way to do this without interfering with anything. And I think it should be the default that the public street is open, that we're on. It impacts our business. That should be the default. People should find alternatives to closing down the street. And it shouldn't be the expectation that events can just come in and decide to use the street as their personal space. And it interferes with our business, especially when there's no notification. Like we said, we had to find out about the events. And I think one thing I mentioned too is we went through the same thing last year as well. So we're back on here because we are still finding about events the same way, kind of through the grapevine, last minute, when it really makes an impact. It doesn't seem like anything changed since the last time we were here.
Just for one point of clarity, and thanks for your comments, I'm going to allow the president to proceed. But when you say Verona Park, I'm wondering what you're referencing when you say Verona Park.
Maybe I have the name wrong, but isn't there another large park at the top of the hill?
Verona Field.
Verona Field? Is that what it's called?
Just for minutes, I appreciate. We're going to reference what you were suggesting as Cribbs Field.
Okay, sorry. I'm sorry, I got the name wrong.
That's quite all right. Thank you for your comments.
So, yes, thank you both, Sarah and Sean, for your comments. And just to be clear, this is Dave Bantlin, and I would like to say that council appreciates the comments and the feedback. Ultimately, the decision to close a street for an event is a decision that rests with council, and we did start after a a couple events last year. We did start last summer a street closure permit application draft that I had started and circulated with council. We discussed it at a couple different meetings. By the end of the summer, it kind of got put on the back burner because we were dealing with, we had several council council resignations. We had a new borough secretary we were hiring, who we did hire, Christine, and then into the fall we had a really long and difficult budget process to work through. So we had a lot of other competing priorities. So I apologize that we are here now in January of 2022 and we don't have that street closure application process finalized. It is on the list, as we'll get to later in the meeting. It is on the list of many different policies that we're trying to develop that are sorely needed. Ultimately, I think we want to have a process that is clear and transparent to the public, and I think that's what this council is working towards. And ultimately, it's going to be a balancing act where members of the public or the community, various community groups, they may request to close the street for a particular event. And we're allowing the right for groups to request such closure. But we want to have a clear process in how that is handled, so it's communicated to the public, communicated to the applicant, communicated to the rest of the council and the borough staff who it'll impact. So, but there is going to be a balance between, things like some of the long-standing and new events that may attract a lot of people, and the needs of the business owners and residents that are affected by it. So all I can say is that it's a decision for council to make on these street closures, and I would also suggest that if there are concerns about particular events, to potentially try to work with the event host if there's suggestions on compromises. I think we can keep the dialogue open there, and hopefully maybe some of that can get resolved even before it comes across council's desk to review an application. So all I'm asking, I wanted to clarify what is happening with that process, and just state that we are working towards implementing that policy and that process. And I know it's been a while, but with the new council, new staff, we're hoping to work through that and have it ready soon.
All right, great. Yeah, that'd be appreciated. Thanks for the update on that.
So I don't want this to continue into a lot of back and forth, just because we have a lot of items on our agenda, but I would just like to hear real quickly from any council members on any brief thoughts they have, since this was a registered comment.
Something that I mentioned, Christine had mentioned about posting a calendar. So if you do have an event, it would be posted. So if you needed to check, you could even put something like that even on the website. If you were interested, like, oh, we know what's happening in January or whatever month, you can come in and check on the calendar and see if there's any events. And that was your idea, which I thought was a great idea.
That's the idea for when we have a new website, which will be
Yeah,
coming, but is not imminent,
right.
just to be clear.
But maybe we can do something like, before we get to the new website, maybe something like an interim, step that we can do that. Have a big calendar.
This is Councilman Warren. I did want to just share in general. I don't have anything to share that's definite with this, but you can, I think, appreciate the challenge that there has to be a harmony between the residents, the businesses, the community use. And I know for you as newer business owners, you have a full business plan, and there are some things you prepared for, but as far as it goes for community use, we just have to make sure that we weigh all these things, because there are also hardships for people who've been at home for a year and a half with school from home or work from home, or have been bound by home, that they want to be out in a walkable, shoppable business district. So we have heard lots of good comments and recommendations and things to consider from business owners. also community groups, also residents. For some people, it's the reason they walk down the hill to come when the weather breaks to come do something. So we have to think of our community as a whole. There are some events that we have either at the riverfront or within the immediate business district or the top of the hill. But of course, no matter where you put it, we have a regionally renowned wrestling event at the top of the hill. No one wants to walk to the top of the hill. You have a closed business district for a huge event that draws the attention of the city paper and raises $10,000. People don't want to walk down the hill. We will never make everyone happy, but you can imagine the challenge of having the harmony of making sure that everything is everything for everybody. It's impossible, but I just want to say, on my behalf, I encourage you to join Chamber of Commerce, and I hope that communication gets stronger. We have a message alert system that we're going to be enhancing and using more frequently as we hire more people and have forms and all these things that are going to make us, hopefully seamless. So I appreciate your patience. I know you're probably not going to be 100% happy with, whatever does happen. I don't think anyone ever will be, but we are considering everything, and thank you for your feedback tonight.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I understand the pressures on you for that. And like I said before too, we're excited to see events. So we're not anti-events. We're just trying to tweak these things to make them kind of more convenient for all of us, and feel like we have to represent the people in the community that are affected negatively by this, even though maybe it's a net positive still. But hopefully we can tweak things to be able to be a win-win.
Absolutely, and I encourage you, take this opportunity and spend this as a positive. Make it a public, make it an open house. Make this a place where you book new tenants for another weekend. Make this a place where a restaurant or a business has somebody walk through the door for the first time. If I'm correct, I think I got. Well, you're shaking your head. No, if I remember correctly, I actually got a wood ornament from your business when you first opened for the Christmas time walkthrough. So a part of my first Christmas in Verona has to do with me walking to your business and receiving that with an open house around the Christmas time. So I do encourage business owners.
I was just thinking about the income lost. It's great to do that once in a while, but I'm sorry to shake my head. I think about how much we're losing. And so that's why we're not trying to attack any of this stuff. It's just we have to there's just money lost. I didn't mean to shake my head at you. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Well, thanks again for the Christmas ornament. It really does decorate our tree, but those were what I wanted to share. So thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments from council this time?
I'd like to just make one quick comment, Mr. and Mrs. McGonigal. This is Sylvia. I was not able to be in person at the council meeting. I am a council member. We have the parking lot across from the Miller Antique. Do some of your folks that come to your place, are they able to use that parking lot? That's very close to walk.
Yeah, that's fine.
I just wondered if
they use that
help you.
And I think that a lot of this, we were able to work with the mayor last year on an event to get people through blocked barricades. It's not that we can't find compromises on it. I think our concern was just the growing number of things that we saw popping up, and just wanting to make sure our voice was heard, that it is very inconvenient and hard on our business. But most of the time, I think we could probably find a solution.
Yeah.
And that parking lot is great.
Yep.
Okay, good. I was just trying to suggest something that might be a help to you, because we are happy that you're here. This is not, that we discourage you or your business. We want you to be here. And like some of our council members said, it's so hard to make everybody happy all the time. And we're trying to do the best that we do know to do. So.
Yep, I completely understand.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We're going to move on with our meeting. There is one thing I forgot to mention at the beginning. We did have an executive session beforehand regarding several personnel issues. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
Nope, just legal and personnel.
Okay, moving on. Discussion items from advisory boards and commissions. There are no agenda items this time. Discussion items from committees and individuals. So we're going to move on to several different. This is going to be the bulk of our workshop discussion. And I will say before we start that we are trying to you may have noticed if you've been, coming to meetings regularly that we have been tweaking the format of our regular business meeting, which occurs in the second Tuesday of the month, and the workshop meeting, which falls in the last Tuesday of the month. We are trying to continue to establish clear lines between those two meetings as they have different purposes. The workshop is more geared for council members to talk to each other about policy issues that are sort of in the works, hence the name. And the business meeting is more for reporting to the public and taking official action on items that have probably already gone through workshop. Now, we may from time to time have action items on the workshop agenda that are of urgent and timely nature, as we do tonight. But generally, we're going to try to use our workshop meetings to kind of talk to each other, brainstorm and come to consensus on things. With the public viewing in, but with us talking to each other. And we're going to try to, going forward, skip reports that maybe would be presented in the business meeting, but will be redundant to the workshop meeting. So I'm just asking council members to be mindful of that, and to just think about this as we go forward with the difference between workshop and business meetings. So with that, I'll go ahead. The first item is maintenance of private property when it poses a threat to health and safety of the neighborhood and or poses a public nuisance. And I'll let Christine discuss this one.
Thanks, Dave. So I just want to remind everybody that several meetings ago, an issue came up related to 473 Union. And this is the property that has some trash in the front yard. It is boarded up. And so there were concerns about, animals and the unsightliness, things of that ilk. And the question becomes, well, what are we going to do about it? And which becomes a broader question of, does the borough want to use public resources to handle problems on private property, even when those issues cause sort of like a neighborhood problem, like if there are rodents, things like that. And so tonight, this is really just starting the conversation about, how does the borough want to handle this? And I wanted to outline for you some of the things that Mike of BIU and I have spoken about, just so you understand the process and, things that are easy to do versus more difficult to do. This by no means is the end of the conversation. It's really just kind of getting us going. So you do have a handout that on one side has very lovely flow chart called the code enforcement process. It's typed up in boxes. And the other side is my chicken scratch, because I just haven't had a chance to make it pretty today. But I want to start actually with the chicken scratch side. And this is the universe of parcels that we're talking about here are parcels that are privately owned, meaning the borough doesn't own them, and they have code issues. So it's possible that something's privately owned, it doesn't have a code enforcement issue. We're not talking about them at all. So the first question that we need to ask ourselves is the owner deceased or not? Because you can't take a dead person to court. So if the owner is not deceased, then we flip to the other side, which we're not going to do yet, but that goes through the code enforcement process if the owner's alive. If the owner is not alive, then the next question becomes, is there a structure on the property? And part of this is because if there is no structure, it's just a vacant parcel, and really the main issue is tall grass, which may encourage some people to, dump illegally. And so maybe there's a litter problem there. It also may encourage certain kinds of animals to take up residence because they have, a habitat to live in, things like that. But if we were to, according to Mike, if we try to take that to court, then the judge is just going to basically say, deploy DPW and lien the property. And so if the owner is deceased and there is no structure, and we're really talking about tall grass and the nuisances that come with tall grass, then the typical response is deploy public works to mow the lawn or hire a lawn service. Doesn't have to be public works, but basically get the grass cut and lien the property for that amount. Now that does come with a fee to lien the property. Sticks out in my mind, it's about $75. So this would be, you wouldn't lien it on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. You would lien it for the whole summer or the whole grass mowing season. There's a very good chance we'd never get that money back. But tall grass is something that really doesn't go anywhere in court. So that's that. And then after a very long time, Mike reported to me that eminent domain could come into play and the borough could take ownership. But then that becomes, a legal thing. So then the next thing is if there is, so the owner is deceased and there is a structure. I'm not sure. The next question becomes, is the structure occupied or not? So if there is a structure and it is not occupied, then we, Mike, as our code enforcement officer, could order DPW to close the building and a placard is hung, basically stating no trespassing. And once that placard is hung, then we would notify the police department that this building, there's no trespassing. And then that would just get added to the list. And when they're on their normal patrol routes, they would just, look for evidence that people have been entering that building illegally. If the building is occupied, then we have to ask, does the occupant have a right to the property? So this would be, maybe the owners of record are both deceased or one, whoever it is deceased, but it's their child, or their adult child who's now living in that property. When they have a right to the property, it gets very difficult because they do have that right to the property, but because they don't actually own it and they haven't gone through the process to become the owner, then they don't have any responsibility for the property. And then at that point, solicitor would need to take legal action to force them to take ownership. And in the meantime, code enforcement is going to be looking for a way to condemn the property because, again, we're talking about parcels that have privately owned properties that have code enforcement issues. So now we have, a property that's inhabited by somebody who has a right, but not the responsibility to take care of it. You can keep issuing citation after citation after citation, but because they don't own it, they have no responsibility. There's it's a dead end. So that one's difficult to enforce. If the occupant does not have a right to the property, it basically means they're squatters. And so we can issue an order to vacate and issue an order to close. And in that case, we would ask Public Works to go and board up the unit, otherwise secure the building. And then, the same as in the other instance, the no trespassing orders would occur and the police would monitor for signs of trespassing. So this gives a, sort of an overview of what happens when we have a deceased owner. And so, this starts the conversation about at least the tall grass, because it's going to be grass season before we know it, even though we're all shoveling out right now. So we need to really think about a policy for tall grass and how do we want to handle that? And, is that of value to the borough? Does council feel that that's a good use of resources to, maintain those properties for, various reasons? And that's for you all to decide, but I put that out there. And then in terms of what happens next, once we have boarded up buildings, but then what is a much larger question. And that's the $1 million question. And so there are some ideas kicking around, but I'm not in a position tonight to speak about any of that. And then if you flip to the other side, that's nice. This is, so on the chicken scratch side, when it says owner deceased, no, and it's the code enforcement process, this nicely done up flow chart shows what happens during the code enforcement process. So, and I know that sometimes there's frustration around how long it takes for the code enforcement process, but I think going through this will help you understand a little bit about why it can take so long sometimes.
Yeah.
So the complaint gets filed, and BIU, Mike will go out and inspect the complaint or re-inspect the complaint as the case may be. And then he prepares a report stating that there's no violation found, or that there is a violation. Then he issues what's called a notice of violation. And then that goes to the BIU administrative office, who prepares the formal letter stating that there's no violation or that there is a violation. And they send it to Mike, they send it to us and to the owner. If they are issued a violation, they're also sent the notice via certified mail, just to kind of cover all the bases. If there's no violation found, then Mike just signs the copy and, you know, the process ends, we're finished. If there is a violation found, then that violation specifies the amount of time that the owner has to abate the problem. So if it's something that's, you know, like an imminent risk, they're going to have a much shorter length of time to abate than if it's, you know, something less egregious. And then Mike follows up with the owner. If the owner does not abate and there's no threat to health or safety, then he's going to issue a second notice of violation. And then that goes to the BIU admin, comes to us again. We sort of start that cycle again. If they do not abate and whatever the issue is poses a threat to health or safety, then Mike can file a citation with the magistrate and basically puts the owner in court. And then this is really where the process can start to take a long time. There's a court hearing, the judge issues the decision, and the judge may say, this is dismissed. And if it's dismissed, then, you know, that's sort of it. Mike signs the copy of the letter for the property file, and the process ends. The judge could also impose a fine on all or part of the violation and set a time frame for abatement. And then that ends the judicial process. Or the judge can issue a continuance, which basically gives the owner more time to abate. And then Mike follows up with the owner. And then if they abate, the process ends. If they don't abate, then we're kicked back to the beginning, basically. And, you know, Mike prepares the reports, et cetera, et cetera. The only other one I did not talk about in here is, you know, Mike tells the letter is sent out to the owner saying you have a problem, you have a violation, and then they abate. Mike inspects it and it's done. The process ends. So there are a couple of places in there where it can just take some time, particularly if it's the kind of violation that maybe is unattractive but doesn't pose a threat to health and safety. They do get longer to abate. If they're issued a second violation, they still have time to abate. If it ends up in court, there can be a continuance. And so you can start to see how the code enforcement process just takes a really long time unless the owner decides to just abate and be finished with it. So I wanted to share these processes just so that you all have an understanding of what's going on, where the sticking points are, and then particularly when it comes to properties for which the owner is deceased, you know, we kind of like end in these patterns of, if it's vacant property, we can mow the lawn and lien. If it's not, then we're dealing with, you know, basically getting boarded up buildings. And then we really need a plan for how do we want to handle boarded up buildings. And then that gets into, now we have properties that need the garbage cleared out and so on and so forth. So I'll leave that there in terms of the process, and I'm happy to answer any questions about that and see if, you know, what the next steps would be, what we want to maybe investigate or, you know, figure out, so that we can start to answer this question of what are we doing with public funds for these private property problems.
I have a question. It's kind of related. Currently, does the borough have a vacant lot fee? Because most towns have vacant lot fees for either abandoned or uninhabited houses, and they get charged a fee for not having anybody living in a house where it's a vacant lot. And those fees normally incrementally increase per year. Reason being, it forces the property owner to get somebody to inhabit the house. If it's going to be uninhabited, it's been vacant, neglected, then they will continue to reserve fees to something following a policy.
I know there is an ordinance related to vacant structures. I don't know if it applies to vacant lots. I would need to read it again to just,
I've just been reading
See
up,
if
and a lot of towns will have a vacant lot or a vacant property fee schedule or punishment for not having somebody in their property or residents.
and like, I know there is one for when there is a structure, and it is a graduated fee schedule that starts out low and becomes much higher. To my knowledge, it has not necessarily been enforced over the years. I also can say that at this point, Mike is aware of that, and he has started to cite that particular section of E-Code 360 when he's issuing these violations. And so we have actually started to collect those fees, but it's also, you know, the year one fee, which is pretty low, and it's on a limited number of parcels. This is, I mean, personally, this is something that if we ever get to the point where we can hire a part-time code enforcement officer that's not just here, you know, in the way, the capacity we're able to have BIU, then that's something that would really be on their radar to be, you know, documenting, citing, that kind of thing. And then collectively, the administrative office would be following up on that. I think right now it's a throughput problem.
Thank you. Just something to look at.
Yeah.
This could be a source of revenue or getting some of these blighted and neglected properties taken care of.
Yeah, agreed.
I think it's clear that we need to do something. We have a responsibility to maintain the borough, but of course, especially now, we want to make sure that we're striking a balance and, you know, not doing more than is necessary and conserving resources and so on and so forth. So I was wondering, your research, which I know you've done a lot of, if you have any sense of what would be on par with other similar communities.
In my limited research on this topic among other municipalities, the extent that I've encountered is mostly related to vacant lots without structures and deploying their public works or hiring, you know, a local lawn care company to, you know, maintain those properties through the lawn mowing period, you know, mowing every 2 to 3 weeks. So, you know, it's not pristine, but it's not a meadow either. And leaning the property and just sort of moving on. There are other things that can be done with vacant properties like buildings, but we're not at the point where we have capacity to either administer those programs, fund those programs. Like we're just not there to really do a strong blight remediation program. But, you know, should we get there, there are case studies out there that we could look to on how to get properties inhabited again. In fact, the city of Rochester, which I know is significantly larger than the little borough of Verona, but the city of Rochester has an amazing program that gets, because there's a lot of blight in Rochester and low property values, and they have a program that basically inventories. And this is something I think we could eventually do with a little bit more administrative capacity and maybe code enforcement capacity, is actually develop a list of properties that are vacant but rehabable. You know, maybe it's recently vacant versus properties that have been vacant and really are tear downs at this point, because those are two different places where you're trying to, you're talking about two different animals and how you can really handle those. So I think there are options out there, but we're not there yet on the structures one. I think we're kind of limited right now with the tall grass and potentially removing garbage from front yards of properties with structures. If we wanted to deploy DPW, for example, to take the tractor up and fill up a couple buckets of garbage and dump it in the dumpster, then we're talking about a couple of hours of public works time, plus, however much it costs to fill up a portion of a dumpster. So one dumpster is about $500, provided we don't go over the weight limit. We're not talking about a lot of money to clean up front yards. It's just kind of the principle and the point, and do we want to do it? And is that a good use of the public resources?
I have a comment I wanted to make, well, two of them. In the step-by-step process for the page, the half that's typed up, what happens when the certified mail is undeliverable and it gets kicked back? Does it just stop, or does it go to court? Like, what happens when you can't have a recipient actually respond to something?
So according to Mike, people frequently won't accept it.
Right.
And so it comes back and they stack up for Mike, and it's part of evidence.
Okay. So then my next question was, in a scenario, summer rolls around this year and we have multiple properties who don't do anything. So we've been we're a glorified landscaping company for these purposes. If it's $75 each time and they visit a property 10 times in the summer, that's $750 that we would, no, you're shaking.
It's $75 to lean it. Chelsea, does that sound right to you?
Yeah, I don't know the exact amount that Allegheny County is for liens. It's probably between $50 and $75. The statute would allow you to get your attorney's fees for that, so you would be able to collect those monies back. What you do is you pay all of the fees up front. So I know that North Huntington Township, we do that for their municipality, and they have a decent success rate. We get requests all the time for them to satisfy. So when a property ends up selling for however reason, we will then satisfy those liens. And I feel like we do it every month. We have several that we do. But again, I don't know the exact cost, but you also can collect your attorney's fees in the lien process.
Okay.
What I was getting to is, if we're not going to have anyone responding on the other end, and they're not paying anything, and they're not mowing anything, and they're not cleaning anything, I'm just wondering if we can circumvent having our Department of Public Works do these things, because we're short revenue. We're short all the time and money spent to do the things that we want to do already. So are we able to, and this is a question of the solicitor, are we able to then, because we can't take a loss, we're not a business, can we hire a business to be lawn care, provide them that we're asking them to do these 10 properties, they go mow them, and if they don't get paid after invoicing to that property owner, they as a business take a loss? So they're essentially doing that.
No, you're not going to be able to do it that way. You would have to contract with, unless the business would agree to do that, which I don't know in a business sense somebody would. What I've seen in the past is other municipalities hiring an independent contractor, going out. The municipality pays the independent contractor, and we lien for that amount plus whatever costs associated with it.
I'm just trying to circumvent the actual cost and time of our crew and our checkbook.
I get it.
And I just didn't know if there's another way around it, if there's a best practice. But
one good thing about the lien process is if a lot of these cases come up through bankruptcy, you do get a higher security. It's a secured lien, so you have a higher threshold, or you're
priority.
You're a higher priority of creditor than you are of others. Like the credit card agencies,
utilities, all the other things. Okay.
You will, because it's a lien, you'll have a higher priority.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else related to that, or suggestions on, where we pick up, like what additional research do we want? Where do we want to start the conversation? Again, do we want to drop it because nobody wants to, or a quorum does not want to, use borough resources to deal with tall grass and trash in the front yard? Just looking for guidance from all of you about, how we're proceeding on this, if we're proceeding.
I don't think we can ignore it. It's a public safety issue. Once you get grass so high, the birds, snakes, and something can fall in there. A lot of these vacant lots are not fenced in. people walking dogs. So it is a public safety issue with that. The weeds and grass being maintained. Sucks that we have to pay for it, but anybody else has any other ideas of how we can get it mowed or get it maintained? I gave my 2 cents to we need to start implementing a vacant lot fee schedule, policy, or start accruing enough fees to where we can foreclose or we can put enough things like that. Get the owners of the properties to start maintaining.
So I definitely think we should have a bigger conversation about maybe we want to contract out the grass cutting like the other municipalities that Chelsea mentioned. But the advantage of the trash removal is it's hypothetically more of a one-off as opposed to being on like regular routine in summer. So contracting out the grass, it makes sense for some purposes. But as far as the trash, I would fully support Christina. She said it's maybe a few hours and possibly part of the dumpster. I would support going forward with that.
So you're speaking of 473 Union specifically, and are you saying you're in support of that generally?
Obviously, we need a policy, and we depend on the numbers, but yeah, I don't know what other companies are.
You talk about this situation because it's pertinent that it gets handled quick, especially before the spring or summer and the sun starts heating all that garbage. It's on their property. It's going to get more rodents and more pests.
Do we know how many properties are being mowed currently?
No.
I was gonna say that's a good place to start, is assessing like what is happening. I think if I were to voice an opinion, it would be the same, like what are we doing that we're not maybe fully aware of if we're just doing them one-off? Because with an audit of what was done last year, I'm sure the foreman can help share with us what was done, but we might have 50 properties or we might have 4. I don't know what it is
So
myself.
you're saying we didn't mow at all last year?
Well, since I have been
Or,
here,
oh,
which
I
was
guess it
not
was
all of the
late,
grass
yeah.
season, we were
problem
not
we have
mowing.
too is throughout the time is we do maintain a lot of property. Because nobody has come forward to say, I own the property, I'm taking responsibility. They don't answer nothing. We have, Ray, the church up on Vogel's Lane. That's a parking lot we made out of it. We ripped the church down because we couldn't find the people. We made a parking lot for the people. The end of First Street. We made a turnaround for the people. Wilbur Washington's place, the dead end. We made it, we're maintaining all these properties because nobody's coming forward. Just like the house on West Railroad, the one that caught on fire. There's a brother and sister that own it. Neither one of them don't want nothing to do with it. We have to tear it down. We have to maintain it. Then whatever we have to do to, to sell it or whatever, it's costing the borough money. I mean, there's a lot of properties in Verona that we maintain because nobody's coming forward. They walked away from it and we can't find them.
Rhoda, did you want to share any of your, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but did you want to share any of your preliminary work that you just handed to me this evening?
Yeah, there's quite a few properties. I had a basic list and I thought you were gonna investigate, like revisit them. And it was amazing how many vacant lots there are. Now, some are lots that are adjoining, let's say, a house, and it's like an extra lot that they have beside their house. But a lot of them are out of town owners. And I think you need to revisit this. I made copies of the information, the owners, where they live. So maybe we can, revisit that. And I have the parcel numbers also, so that helps.
There's right across the street from me, not the big lot, the smaller lot in between two homes.
Right.
The borough, I can't remember the name. We tore the house down. Now there's this huge tree on there and both sides are complaining that the branches are rubbing up against the houses. It's the borough's responsibility now. What are we gonna do? We're gonna have to go in and trim those trees because we're maintaining the property right now. And nobody owns it. They walked away from it.
I think there is some.
He lives in Michigan, but he doesn't want nothing to do with it.
Yeah, but I think there's rule of thumb. If there's a length of so many years, I think there is a process that we can do, like the vacant property program type. So I have made copies of some, quite a few actually, that are negligent in paying their taxes for many years.
The Monroe property. I mean, look how long that's been vacant down in Sylvan down here. And finally, I guess they gave up and said, you know what, they turned the property over to us. Now it's gonna be a community garden.
So with this information I gave Christine, you can maybe pursue some of these properties, because like I said, I have marked some of them that are very delinquent. So maybe we can, start working on that.
So it seems like the starting place really, well, there are two things. One is, are we doing something about 473 Union? And if so, are there at least 4 votes to do something about that? And we don't need to do that tonight because it's not actually an action item, so we can't add it. But I can add it, like, you should think about that, and I can add it as an action item for next time, to make some concrete decision about that one. But then it also sounds like there's continuing this work that Rhoda has started, getting an inventory of not just vacant like lots with grass, but also vacant lots with structures. Are they, and really going through this code thing, is the owner deceased or not? Is it inhabited or not? Sort of figuring out which buckets problematic parcels fit into, so that we can think holistically about how do we solve the problem? What's the largest, most pressing problem? And really what's the problem, the primary problem we're trying to solve? Is it, beautification? Is it health and safety? Is it, getting tax dollars? Is it all the above? Is there a priority within those options? Because that may impact the policies and like the course of action. So seems like, and this is a long-term project. This is not something that's gonna, snap fingers and it's done, but sounds like that's kind of where we need to start.
Yeah.
Further to add to what you were saying, completely on board with that. That's where, when I was reading up about vacant lot case, they increase after every year to a point where after 5 years, then the borough has the opportunity of taking over the property or buying the property and then reselling it, getting it back on the taxes.
That's
A
what
lot
I-
of policies, a lot of towns have policies like that, so that's why I want to put them in.
And, we have to get them back on the tax rate. That's a goal.
Yeah.
But now, if we start approaching Union Street, 473, there are other separate properties on Union Street. So if we do one,
We're gonna be doing them all.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's just one
Well, that-
street.
Yeah, setting a precedent with one property might not reflect the policy that we can or want to do. So it's going to be a dangerous place to go into. Now, saying that, my suggestion is that we don't come to a meeting and past tense find out that someone's asked somebody to do something, something's been done, and we're not doing this together. So if we can audit and rate and prioritize them together, we might find that there are things that outside of a policy being created that we need to do first. But, just so everyone in the public knows, taking action on a couple of things that are red flags right now might not necessarily be something moving forward as a whole,
If you just done for public safety.
if needed. I mean, beautification is one thing, and you're talking about kids or people walking dogs. Trespassing and then having a danger is one thing also. So I think as we see these, this is just an example, but there's going to be other things we're going to have to take a look at to understand. Is it a priority? I mean, I have an eyesore that I've built a fence in my yard because I'm looking at a broken down gutter. I'm looking at an 18-inch tall lawn. Each one of the neighbors have taken turns mowing. Everyone's taken turns doing all these things, and it is exhausting. We had a public comment last month, I think it was, that talked about that, and I told them firsthand I've done the same thing. But even in my backyard, things don't work as quick as I want them to be. But if we set precedent, there's going to be an expectation that the public see this in every one of our streets of the neighborhood, and we have over 9 miles of streets here, not to include alleys. So I do want to share that it will be a precedent we're setting.
Yeah, I think I like the idea of prioritizing and inventorying what properties we have, what we're talking about here, and what categories or buckets they all fall into. So I know that might take a little bit of work. I don't know what capacity we have to do that, right away, Christine, but I know that, what's that?
None.
I mean, I think ideally that would be something to work towards. I know that Tarentum, I saw there was a blight webinar like a year or two ago that I attended, and Tarentum was like one of the examples they gave. That they actually have a pretty good website where they just took Google Maps and they mapped out their blighted properties vacant properties, whatever, and they're categorized. So, and it looking at it, the person that was talking about it, it sounded fairly, once you have a list of the properties and the information about them, it was pretty straightforward to set that up. So just something to keep in mind. But I think, maybe it doesn't have to be all or nothing, because I don't think any of us want to, hit every property and maintain the heck out of it like crazy. But we also don't want to do nothing. So maybe there's a middle ground where, again, we just set a precedent, we set a policy on what are the worst offenders that need, or the ones that need it the most. And
I agree, we have the triage situation. Some
Yeah.
places, there might be a house that has an in-ground pool that the fence fell down around it, and they have 18-inch high weeds. We have to take care of that fast, or someone's gonna fall in that in-ground pool, or themselves, or worse. So each situation is different, and the public has to realize that. If we take care of one property or more, that doesn't necessarily mean we're gonna take, or a union, we're not gonna take care of every property. Each property is different depending on the aspect of public safety. And
Well,
that's what our main concern is.
yeah, and if we have a policy or a flow chart like this, this is really helpful to see, like, we have a policy and a flow chart so we can justify why we're doing one and not the other, then I think that'll really help. And yeah, with consistency. So.
And also, we're going against what's been done by past councils. So, the public's going to have to also be patient in this, because what would have been done 2 years ago or 2 months ago or 20 years ago is not what we're aiming to do moving forward. So it will be, patience on everyone's side for these.
Okay. All right. I think that covers that. The next item is policy priorities for council and for committees. Christine, I think you're gonna.
Yeah, I'm going to screen share. And then
You're gonna be sharing the document, so I'll wait till you pull that up. But
Make sure we can see it here.
So what Christine and I have been putting together is, and you have in your packets, is a list of policies that need to be written. And so everyone on council and mayor should have that. This has been just a working draft list that from past meetings, past discussions, issues that have come up either at the borough office or in a meeting or elsewhere. We've talked about it the last couple months, just that we really need to focus on getting some key policies in place. We're lacking a lot of policies in general. Just we've in the past, we've handled a lot of things by, a particular house or a particular property comes before borough council, and then we make a decision on what to do with it. And so that can get to be pretty taxing and time consuming if we're just council's dealing in the weeds, no pun intended, with every single, issue of a particular type that comes up. So the idea of a policy is that the borough staff, including Christine, have direction on what council all agrees on for how we want to handle certain issues or certain things. And so we basically need to establish that policy, and then that ideally will help us run like a more well-oiled machine in the long run. So anyway, we have a long list, about 20 some odd items. I don't want to get into all of these in detail tonight, but I wanted to go through them so the public can see what we're working on, so council can see. I think most of us are going to agree, or I think all of us are going to agree that these are things that are needed. I want to get your feedback on really which ones are the highest priorities at this time, and I want to go through, and with Christine's help, she set up a spreadsheet here that I think everyone can see that lists the 6 different committees, and so we're going to try to go through and just real briefly talk about which committee each of these policies, the development of these policies would go into. And then at the end, we'll try to identify what the biggest priorities are for all of us as a council. So, I don't know, is there anything I'm missing so far, Christine? You want to just, I'll jump right in.
Yep, go ahead. Do you
So-
want me to just tell you how I set up the spreadsheet, just so you know what you're going into?
Sorry, what's that?
Let me just tell you how I set up the spreadsheet, so you know what
Sure.
you're going into. So I figure we could like bucket them.
Yeah.
And then there's a little tiny column, and then we can rank them.
Yep.
So that each committee knows what's
Yep.
like council thinks is the most important stuff.
Okay, great. Some of these might fall into, we've talked about a Venn diagram of committees. Some of these might fall into multiple committees. And what we might do is if there's a committee that has, a lot on their plate, we're trying to spread out things out evenly, make, I forget the saying, but make,
Many
There's-
hands make light work.
many hands make light work. Thank you. So we'll try to do that if we can, if it makes sense. And we're not going to get to all of these right away. Some of these we might, it might take us a little while to get to, but without further ado, I'll just go down the list and explain some of these. And the first one is a sign policy for Cribbs Field. So this would basically be a policy for the electronic sign, the marquee sign at the corner of Second and South that was recently installed. Right now, that's programmable by us as the borough to program, messages, events, that sort of thing. And we don't have a policy on which events, which groups, which entities, have a right to get something published there. It is a borough-owned sign. So we just need to develop a policy about basically what gets put up there and who does that through what channels within the borough staff. Is that?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is there any way to obtain the transcripts of the zoning board hearing? Because when they approved the installation of the sign, they approved it with certain conditions. Like no outside private advertising on the sign. So when writing that policy, we will need to know what those conditions were, because I'm under the impression that the zoning board hearing is, if we were to try to do something that they didn't rule on, we would have to appeal their ruling. So
Yeah.
if we were to make policy that violated their original ruling, we would have to appeal that ruling, which would in turn cost the borough money.
Yeah.
So it's probably be better off if we followed their original ruling to write the first policy.
Yeah. I don't believe that that's a good point. I don't believe that we have the transcript or the
I mean, I was
The
at
document.
the hearing.
yeah.
I'm not gonna
But
tell
would
council rely on my memory, and I'm not gonna rely on that memory. I would rather have the transcripts.
So that would be
So I was not there either, but the decision by the zoning hearing board should list all of the conditions, so you could get that, request that from them, whether you want to do it through a right to know request or just, I don't know, Christine, if you have a relationship with whomever that. Okay, so, yeah, it shouldn't be difficult, but they also have a court reporter there, or they should have been recording it, so I wouldn't waste the money though on ordering the
And
transcript.
Craig was also, Craig and
Okay.
Matt Fitch were both present.
Okay. So,
Oh, that's
yeah, the decision should have all the conditions that.
I just want to make sure before we start working on that policy,
Mhm.
that we have those decisions, so we don't do double work.
So you want to rate these and rank these, or you want to assign them to committees?
we're gonna assign them all, and then I think we'll rank them after that.
Okay.
Once we've all gone through it. But Christine, is that something we could reach out to the zoning hearing board and just see if?
Yeah, I'll request it.
Okay, thanks.
Thank
So sign policy for Cribbs Field, I believe that would fall under the communications committee.
Mhm.
Anyone?
Perfect.
Okay. This next one is similar, sign policy for electronic sign on ARB. This is it's actually a billboard, the Steel City billboard. They own and operate it. When they were, and I don't know if this was a zoning hearing board ruling or something, just the council that they offered to council, but we do have a certain amount of time each month that they've offered to the borough to use for borough-related, events or announcements. So similar to the marquee at Cribs Field, this one we have, I think it would have to be, I think there is some discretion by Steel City Billboards about what they allow, but because I don't think that we had anything in writing when this was established, but we can have our own policy on who and what gets put on that sign under the borough free time, basically. Sure.
We just gotta know the history of this. We might want to reach out to Citizen Builder with a service agreement or terms of service from them, so we know what the actual terms of service that they're providing us. And that will have something in writing. Basic service agreement would be a place to start. And then we can ask them to elaborate on what they agreed originally, like how many minutes, what's allowed to be put on there. That's someplace to start. So we're not start.
Yeah.
Good committee work.
We don't have I don't think we have a terms of service agreement. Nothing in writing.
I mean, that may be just, that's a good point. That could just be part of the policy that we develop is, hey, here's an agreement with Steel City. I mean, we're not paying anything for the service, but here's what they're offering to do. Just have, maybe it's just a resolution or something in writing that Steel City agrees to. It says, yep, they agree, we agree. So there's no dispute going forward over what's allowed, what isn't allowed, so that we know. So that may dictate what the policy is, but yeah, that would be something the committee could look at. So again, that's communications. The next one is part-time police officer benefits and policies.
Finance committee, I think we could handle that because it has to do with contract and agreement.
Yeah, it's not a contract per se because the part-time officers are not under contract, but it is, it is sort of an agreement if there's certain policies or benefits being extended to them.
Mhm.
Would you agree with that?
I would, because
Christine?
there's like a uniform allowance and
Yeah,
there's if you work X number of days for the whole year, you get that equivalent number of days as vacation the following year and et cetera, et cetera. So I think that and that's, impacts money. So I think that fits in there.
okay. So
We
that,
do that for part-time employees.
We just don't have anything in writing.
yeah, and a lot of these, no, you bring up a good point, Vince. A lot of these things, we've been doing something related to these policies. Some of them we haven't been doing anything. So no policy is still a policy, but some of these things we've been doing something, we just haven't put it in writing, or it's just the sort of, this is the way we've always done it.
Yeah,
But-
then the council changes. Who knows what's going on?
Exactly. So this puts it in writing. It's there to, it's not set in stone. It can be modified in the future, but at least we have
I
something
agree with it. I
where everyone's, yeah.
like all the policies.
But I'm just-
That way, we're laying groundwork for our replacements or our future. So.
The next one, policy on who reaches out to the engineer, and there's two of them. They're listed separately, but they're very similar. Policy on who reaches out to the engineer and who reaches out to the solicitor. So those are actually on tonight's agenda as the next two items.
A lot of expenses follow those as well. So I don't, I'm sure everything has a trail of money to or from it, but this is one that's specifically to have us discipline in how much we're spending and what process we use to use our resources.
Yeah, so this one was actually something that Christine started on, and councils, had a chance to review, and we'll be discussing these next. So I don't think there's anything else to say about those. The next one's policy on using council chambers. So this would be for meetings, community meetings, civic group meetings, that sort of thing.
Is this an extension of infrastructure and asset management where we could see this as an asset and its uses?
Either that or recreational community.
I was thinking recreation and community events.
Good instance of overlap. I don't think there's a wrong answer because it's just going to start somewhere for us all to review.
I don't think overlap is bad.
Yeah. So the infrastructure would be more looking at the actual facility. This would just more be a policy on who gets to use council chambers, what the process is for requesting that use, how frequently, that sort of thing. Correct.
Those are big communications.
The third bullet of recreation. Then.
There's a lot of these grad meetings here is. for communication.
Yeah, I mean, this one could fall
I think it's different. I think
a
in
number of
this,
ways.
the Recreation and Community Event Committee, the third bullet's forms and applications for public facilities. So this is literally our biggest facility.
Yeah, that's kind of where, just like a use of a park.
Mhm.
That's sort of how,
So events, you share that with Recreation and Committee or community events.
I mean, we could, when we get through the list, we could move it if we feel like,
So where we want to put it for now?
I think recreation and community events.
And we did have, there might be something in the filing cabinet, we did have a form to fill out to reserve council chambers. On a
Okay,
maybe a year, maybe a year and a half.
yeah,
So we have something to start.
okay,
And if I can add one more
Sure.
thing that I think has to go into that policy, particularly in the times of COVID, but even, beyond, is there a policy on, you have to wipe down the desk with a wipe
Housekeeping.
or,
Sleep.
just
Completely.
things like that. If you rearrange the furniture, it has to be put back to, just so that it's, to me, it goes beyond reserving the space. It's also, leaving it in good working condition.
yeah, or in the condition, if there's an expectation about where the equipment needs to be left or the furniture, that sort of thing. Yeah, it's a great point. So that should be in there for the committee to look at. The next one is a police bonus policy.
This might be moot, but if I added this to the list back when this was a thing.
I mean, this kind of fall under what would fall under the part-time police officer benefits and policies. Is it kind of, or it might just go away altogether because we're not doing it.
We're not doing it
This
this
year.
year, so it kind of goes away for right now. You know what, I'll just move that one to some other column that's not in somebody's spot. And
Yeah.
then we'll table that and deal with it later.
This next one's a big one and it's going to be pretty important, but a purchasing policy, including petty cash and or credit cards or P cards. So in the past, we've had debit cards or a debit card to use to access, general fund monies. And that's really not the best practice. We need to be moving to a credit card or P card so that there's P purchasing card is what that stands for, to have limits. And going along with that is not just for the card usage, but in general, what are the limits of authority for different staff members? As a department head, they may be able to authorize spending of up to X amount. And it may vary by department. It may vary by employee. What amount are they allowed to spend without having to go to council? This would help cut down a lot of the, hey, here's a resolution to authorize
Assault box.
a salt box for $250. This would really help us, move more efficiently in the future on issues like this. So this is a finance policy, obviously, and then petty cash. I don't know if you have anything to add on that, Christine.
I do have actually something to add on that. This is actually a really important policy to work out very soon. By very soon, I mean at least the petty cash issue within the next month, because right now the police department uses petty cash to give officers money when they have to go downtown to court. And they have to pay, for parking, which is, just under $20. So the police secretary will give each officer $20 when they have to go downtown. They get a receipt and they bring their $4 change back and it gets logged. And so right now they are out of petty cash and they have officers that need to go downtown. I have my little list here. In fact, tomorrow an officer is going downtown. So he's going to need $20 to pay for parking. And then I have, there's 5 additional 4 days, but 5 officers going downtown between now and the next workshop meeting. So we need to figure out how are we going to get those officers money for parking.
Do these parking garages take Visa card, credit cards, P cards?
They do take credit cards, but we don't have credit cards for the police department to use to just swipe the card. So this one is really important that we come up with, sort of an immediate solution with, we need to pay for parking tomorrow. And I mean, they do have like ticket money that can be an IOU. I mean, there's like, it's just accounting. So, I mean, like they literally have a $20 bill over there that they can give to the officer to pay for parking. But I don't know that using petty cash is really the way that we want to go. And, for, just good stewardship of public resources.
No, a lot of people got away from petty cash.
Yeah. So, so I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention to elevate this issue as something we do need to resolve. And then just as an FYI, as Dave said, we had been using, or still are technically using a debit card, which links to the general fund, which is really not a good idea. And so I'm working with the bank on, at a minimum, turning that into a credit card so that should there be fraudulent activity, the fraudsters are not pulling from the general. But that turns out it's not so easy to get a credit card as you might think. And so we're working through that process with S&T right now.
Yeah, question. Have we talked to the owners of, do they use the same garage every time they get up now?
That I don't know.
If they do, we might want to contact the owner of the garage, the company that runs the garage, parked cars in Pittsburgh for 9 years. And a lot of the companies that work down there, when they do with police officers or lawyers or reporters, they will give you a sticker to put on your car. And then when you pull in, they'll scan that sticker. And they'll put
We can look.
There might be a workaround with having to give officers petty cash to park in the garages down. I've worked at the garages. A lot of it, they work for reporters from the same company coming in and out, and they didn't want to have to be giving them petty cash all the time to park. So they had basically a lease there, but it wasn't a month-to-month lease. It was a lease to where you just got billed for however many days you used the garage. You just scan your card, scan it. That's how it.
Something to look into.
Might be an easier solution. And a good workaround for all.
Okay. Let's see, the next one, sick and holiday time policy. So that's like an employee. That's an employee policy. I guess finance, since it would fall under benefits, right? So that's pretty straightforward. Ticketing policy when we're not street sweeping or plowing, etc. So as I understand this, if for some reason the street sweeper is broken, or we can't plow for various reasons, or maybe let's say due to manpower, and it's on a street sweeping day, do we ticket? Do we still ticket? Correct?
That's right.
So this public safety. Seems reasonable.
Because that's the non-personnel
Yeah,
police things.
yeah, yep, that sounds good. And the next one,
This one needs tabled because we need to do some more research.
no daylighting water outside of right away. Okay. So, you want to just stick that over?
Yeah, stick
Yeah.
over here.
Next one, communication plan. This is a big one. It'll cover a lot of different things as far as communication. I don't know if I even scratch the surface here, do it justice, but you know, it might include social media and the website, who's authorized, who is sending out messages on behalf of the borough, that sort of thing. We don't have any kind of comprehensive communication plan. You probably know other things.
Yeah, this one is actually humongous and fits under probably a lot of these buckets.
Yeah.
Because there's a communication plan related to personnel. So for example, if somebody's calling in sick, what's the chain of command so that, you know, like if I'm closing the borough office because I'm sick, who am I telling? Am I telling you, Dave? Am I telling everybody, you know, what's going on? If, you know, one of, not AJ, but one of the Johns is sick, like, is he feeding that to AJ? Is AJ feeding to me? What are we doing there? You know, so how do we communicate sort of internally? This could fall under some of the things that you're doing, Mayor, currently with emergency management, which would also fall under the public safety, because, you know, how are we communicating if there's an emergency, like beyond the text alerts, because we know that that's less than 400 subscribers. I mean, this is actually a huge undertaking, but I think it's a really important one because it just impacts, you know, internal operations, but also, you know, the public and how the borough interacts with the public, and I mean, the list goes on and on. So I'm actually gonna highlight this one in this yellowish color and know that, you know, maybe the communications committee is pulling it together, but kind of everybody's gonna have to pitch in on that one to put their pieces into the puzzle.
Yeah, I mean, there might have to be an outline for the plan, the overall plan, and then identify different components that go out to different groups.
Public facing, internal, interdepartmental.
Yeah, like you said, there's public safety, there's employee issues, there's, you know, community events issues. So
I think the communication committee could develop a plan, but they could also reserve the right to delegate parts of that plan out to other committees.
yeah,
The health and safety committee will provide a communication plan when it has to do with health and safety. The communication committee has to develop a plan.
yeah, at least the framework and
Yes,
the
yes.
draft for, yeah, I agree.
And in that plan, it will delegate the power. for the other forms of communication.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Next one is a signs and banners policy. So that would be for, is that for hanging or posting signs and banners on borough and property?
This one, as I understood it, was broader than that because somebody may have hung a tax preparation service sign or banner in January, and then, you know, tax day is always the same day. Well, mostly always the same day every year. If it's still up in May, you know, what are we doing about that?
Is this
so I think this is
temporary? Yeah, like
broader.
temporary sign
Hanging it where, like, and
I mean, maybe there's hanging it on,
example of it.
you
or
know, on
the-
a fence or something, or
You should have that under your zoning ordinance, the sign, right, like if a temporary signs. You might want to
Temporary
look at your
use.
zoning ordinance and talk to the CHB if you think that there's something else that should be addressed for temporary signs and permanent signs, political signs, all those.
I remember a few years ago, I had to fill out an application to put signs up.
Yes. Yeah.
It
so
does exist somewhere.
It
I
should
filled
be
it
in your
out.
zoning ordinance.
Yeah, but it should be consistent. So with this group tackling this, you can't talk about a March event and start advertising in November and have temporary signs up, or have a grand opening sign up for 15 months.
So under
Or
the,
sandwich board as a permanent board around the community.
right, so you want to be able to indicate, I think through zoning, that's the appropriate mechanism for those temporary signs. So like if it's an event, it should say that at 30 days in advance, that sign can be put out or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Is that community development committee then? Or jury?
I moved it to the side because it sounds like maybe it's in E-code 360 already,
Yeah,
or maybe there's something, else what otherwise documented. So I just stuck it there, but
okay.
we'll, we can revisit if necessary.
If I sort of remember, I believe our code enforcement officer used to handle, if the sign was left up too long, they would go and take it back.
A lot of times you see with elections,
Yeah.
those are left.
Or sometimes Pittsburgh Indoor Sports Arena asked to put up signs for their summer camp. I came to council and got approved. But on the application, there was a time. If they exceeded that time, I believe it was the code enforcement officer that went out and collected signs and called the place. Signs like you're gonna get fined, or maybe they waived it. I don't know. I don't know what happened.
Okay,
I'm just giving feedback on what has happened in the most recent past.
yeah. Okay, the next one is park rental policy updates. So that seems to fall under Recreation and Community Events Committee. And that's basically pretty straightforward. The policy on renting out the parks. I know we have an application form that may need to be updated with, the newer facilities at Cribs with the pavilion. So the next one is maintenance of private property with public funds policy. We talked about that earlier.
Community development committee?
Yeah, I think that falls under community development. As long as it's not unsafe and vacant structures, and this may tag team with public safety, I guess.
Yeah, I think we had said that community development was going to deal primarily with occupied structures
Yep.
and public safety was going to deal primarily with vacant structures. And so it's probably both, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I'm going to put that in both places
yeah,
and just note that it's a shared
Leverage.
policy.
okay. The next one is capital replacement policy. So that's a big one. I think that will deal with capital being basically infrastructure, anything that the borough owns that has a life expectancy of 5 or more years, or costs $5,000 or more. So that can go right along with the asset audits and looking at what we have and looking at what the life cycle is for some of these things, and how we evaluate what needs to be replaced and when. Am I doing it justice, Christine? I think
So.
okay. The next one's full width paving policy when utility companies open the street. So if I'm understanding this correctly, when utility companies open the street, like I believe People's Gas did up on First Avenue recently, they are only required to repair the area that they worked in, correct? And so full width paving, at what point would that come into play?
This is something that Matt had actually suggested. He said some places have gone to requiring that they basically don't just patch the road because then you get a really bumpy spot, but instead they have to repair the full width of the road so that the car drives over. I mean, there's like a bump, but it's not like pothole feeling.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah, so this would be a policy to determine when we would require those utility companies to do full width paving.
Either when or that we require. I don't know what it would be. I
Yeah.
haven't done research to see what other communities are doing.
Okay,
Matt just suggested this is a thing we might want to look into, particularly if our new roads get, if there was an emergency,
Yeah.
people's had to dig it up.
Yeah.
And so, that's unfortunate, but if we want to preserve the nice new road, then maybe
okay,
we want that
Can
policy.
I add
Yeah.
to that?
Yeah.
Like when the utility company comes in and puts a new pole in, and like on South and ARB, it still isn't replaced, the sign, you cannot see the crosswalk, and the handicap entrance is still dug up, and it's been probably 4, 5, maybe even 6 months. And Matt has sent them a letter, and still nothing has been done.
I'd say the same for also on Athletic and Vogels, where they did work in March of 2020. The Oakmont Water Authority showed up and did work on the property corner itself, where the grass is, plus the blacktop.
Right.
But
They
it's
don't-
beyond the road. They need to put all the property back, whether it's the road or the other side of the curb.
Within a
Yeah.
timely matter.
Yeah. And I know that since then it's sunken a little bit, it's settled, they're gonna have to do it again, but the grass is never, they threw down gravel on grass, so that's not a true repair. And it's been 2 years now. So I think if we go for number 17 and go beyond the paving, but a policy on just property in general.
yeah. I think that would go under infrastructure and asset management. Roads are our infrastructure. And,
It's a standard we would hold, but also the utilities that come in.
Yeah. so it's having a standard for how it's similar to capital, capital replacement in a sense, how we replace that when it's damaged. So the next one is parking enclosure. So this is a specific instance, but I think it could apply to other areas. And I think that the committee looking at this should look at other areas in the borough that would fall under this sort of thing. But the parking enclosures of South Avenue between ARB and Bruno Street, basically between the dental office there, just above it, and the intersection with Bruno. And so that right now is currently closed due to all the snowfall. And we put up no parking signs due to we knew that there was a big snowfall coming last week. And so there is a concern about damage to vehicles that are parked there during a snow event if DPW has to plow that. So this would be just a policy to establish, what's the guidelines, what's the rules, so that Christine, the police, DPW all know what the guidelines are. When to put up no parking, or if we're going to have no parking times, or when to close it. And maybe, we're already closing it, but maybe just formalizing that in a written document.
I think so, because it's like a temporarily unsafe structure or roadway.
And everybody in this town knows that that's what happens.
Agreed.
But new people know.
But
So we do that.
and there were some new issues that kind of arose from some damage to vehicles during an event when they were trying to clear. So I think it raised the issue of, should we just not have parking on that street at all?
Well,
Should we have it during certain
We've
times?
always
So-
closed that, probably about 5, 6 years ago, there was a woman killed there, because we didn't block the street off.
Yeah.
Snowed.
And that's fine. I'm not saying that we change anything about what we're doing, but I think it's just to put in writing what the rule is. I mean, if the whole public works crew were left tomorrow, or we had different, someone retired and we got someone new, just so we have something saying, hey, here's the policy for this. This is,
And there's at least
This is-
one other street in this town that you should look at.
so that's, it's parking and enclosures related to, winter weather is kind of the idea there.
If we have policy, then we
So-
don't have to hesitate at first snowfall next year. Recall it was 6 years ago that something happened. It's just,
Yeah.
no hesitation, and just do it next time it happens.
But like just coming to mind, High Street leading from Union.
Yeah.
to Parker. in my lifetime, there's been 50 accidents on that. We actually put the salt truck on. They were trying to salt that area, and it went because High Street is the street that curves down onto Union, and we put the salt truck. So that's.
Actually, I think he was going up the building.
Yeah, but
It was Union.
regardless,
Yeah, he was on Union. He wasn't trying.
Well,
yeah, he was trying to go up high. But that little section is detrimental. It's very dangerous.
yeah, and that's something good for the committee to look at and consider any other streets like that. As part of, I don't want it to just be a South Avenue plan. I think it should be a borough-wide plan on any street that's affected. So, the next one is, this is also on the agenda tonight. And may need some further work is the, oh, real quick, that last one we put under public safety, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, just so everyone's aware. Playground opening policy. Now, we have an existing Cribbs Field policy that was developed in the fall for opening and closing the gates at Cribbs Field, but it only really covered the field, did not cover the playground at Cribbs, and it did not cover the playground at Riverbank, which also has a locked gate. And the docks should fall under there too. That's a good point. And this is just opening and closing because there's gates that we lock or unlock, under certain, it's changed over the last few years, I think. I think we want to try to get something consistent that everyone's aware of. I'll talk about that a little bit later in the meeting, but I think that would fall under recreation and community events. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, next one is next to our finance policies, and we've talked about these in the past year, and we kind of postponed really developing this, but a minimum fund balance policy, and this would be for the general fund, and this would be a policy going forward for future budget cycles to say that as a policy we're gonna look to achieve a certain minimum fund balance at the end of the year, and then that gets baked into the budget, and that may need to be scaled up. We may not. We may say, okay, we want to be at a certain level that's higher, and maybe we know that while we're still working through some financial issues, we might need to have a tiered or phased approach to level that up, which is sort of what we've been doing the last year or so. So that's that one. The next one is the sewer fund repayment policy. Again, we talked about this in the budget process and before, but there's money from money that is owed from the general fund to the sewer fund, and we've sort of tabled that in this current year. We're going to need to look to develop a policy going 2023 and beyond, and how frequently and how long and how much each year we're going to pay that back. The next one is having a policy, it's sort of an internal policy on responses to public when an email or other correspondence is directed to all of council. I think right now it's a little unclear, who responds. Is it the president? Is it the vice president? Is it someone else? Is it what if that person is not available, incapacitated, just to try to get us more communicating to the public as a council of one, rather than 5 different people sending responses or sending communications that may be viewed as, oh, there's 5 different people acting on behalf of the whole council, that this is confusing. So just to be clear and to make sure that we are responding when needed. and maybe that response is just, thank you for your comment. We'll review it with council, but just a policy on how we do that so that we're all on the same page going forward. So that probably communications.
That will probably be included.
It certainly could be, yep. And then the last one,
There are 3 more.
there's
Yeah.
3 more,
I
okay.
added 2 more.
That's all right. Street closure policy. This would be, yeah, this is, sorry, I had a brain lapse there for a second. Yeah, this is the street closure permit process, like we talked about at the beginning of the meeting. Whenever a group or an entity requests a street closure, what the policy is for that. And that does involve some communication. So I know that Vince is already looking into this and working on this as part of the Recreation and Community Events Committee. Fortunately, the same 3 folks that are on that are on the Communications Committee. So it can sort of be, there's a communications element to it.
Trish, I talked to Sylvia. Are you available tomorrow? I want to start.
Yeah, I can do it.
I was making sure. I checked with Sylvia tonight. She's available. I told her that, she said, I don't know if we're starting this month or next month. So I would like to start this month. There are issues with street closures that we need to address.
Where's the next one? Okay.
And I just want to let the public.
Forming
know that
center
we
Just
are-
let
we
me
are
know
addressing-
let me know as
Is
you
that
get
all?
those permits
I
in,
added
Two more.
so I can approve them.
We gotta first get a, we gotta get the permit approved first, so once we get that approved,
Right.
then we will. Yeah, we're gonna let you know definitely, because some of the permits might require extra police for directing traffic. That's
No
being
problem.
looked at to put on the permit.
Yeah, I have no problem with that.
And part of that plan is gonna be a communication plan to let the police, the DPW, and businesses, or residents be affected by the closed street.
Right.
And how to communicate with
All right, so the next one is warming center policy. This is a recent addition to the list. That would go under public safety, I believe.
I think so. Chris, if you could please mute who just joined under the name Chris. Thank you.
Warming center policy. I added it to the list.
So yeah, what are the rules? What are the procedures for opening up the borough building as a warming policy? Yeah.
And maybe it's a reaction to public disaster. So if there's a flood, if there's cold temperatures, if there's a community fire. So I think it's, the church, it's the borough building, it's the resources we have. So it's not, right now it's probably more timely.
Be right up.
It may also be addressed in your emergency management plan. So you might
It
want
is.
to look at it.
Yeah.
It will be, but sometimes, I was talking with Ray, sometimes the emergency management plan might take a little longer to kick in, and we need a stopgap. And this policy will be a stop, because like, if we have a flood, and it happens that emergency management is, they might be doing other stuff.
Right.
And we have to have a stopgap in order to open up the building for people to get out of the flood waters. Or if we lose electric, or if it's heat issue. So,
What committee is that going under?
Public safety. I do think for this one in particular, it'd be good to coordinate with the mayor.
Yeah,
Yes.
because I have all this information.
Just to review it with him and include him as part of the developing the policy or looking at reviewing with the emergency management plan if that.
It'll probably mirror the plan with just a couple tweaks to get everything done more quickly.
Yeah.
It might also include like nitty gritty operations things as well that maybe are so nitty gritty that they're not in an emergency management plan, but somebody needs to know like literally who was going to unlock the door.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So the last one on our list is emergency rock salt policy.
Purchasing?
For when deliveries supply chains get clogged up. So not sure where this one would fall.
Is it infrastructure and asset management? Is it an asset if we dispense it?
This one, I think I would stick under either finance or infrastructure and asset management. The reason this one came up is because of the email I sent to everybody the other day about, you know, we're supposed to be able to get our rock salt within 5 business days, but for whatever reason, the delivery companies are currently not making that within 5 days. And so, you know, when we need to conserve salt in the winter because we aren't sure when the delivery is coming, what are we going to do? What if we had an icing event tonight? And I mean, there still is salt over in Occupant. It's not like there's no salt. It's just the salt's not coming in a timely manner. And so if we had an icing event and we needed salt, what's the plan? You know, like Mayor was talking about, like, you know, his son has salt available and we could possibly, I'm not saying like this is the policy, I'm saying that there are probably other places where we could get salt in a case of an emergency. So, which is but I would like to have a policy in place so that if we're in that and AJ comes to me and says, you know, we've got one more truckload of salt. What do you want me to do with it? I don't have to like sit there scratching my head, wait 2 weeks to have a discussion, you know, it would just be able to say, here's the policy. We're calling up so-and-so. They said that they'd be able to provide this. I'm authorized to buy it because we have a purchasing policy. I have a credit card. They can pay for it, or a P card, whatever it is. And then like we have salt and they can do what they got to do. So that's, I would put this one under infrastructure and asset management because it really is about maintaining the roadways.
Municipal equipment and supply as well.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
touches on other
Yeah.
areas, but I think,
What you said that our roads are our biggest.
Yeah.
form of infrastructure, so that's taking care of those.
Yep. So that sounds
it.
good. So those are all the policies. I know that was a little
Susan's
long,
popping at home.
but those, you know, we definitely have our work cut out for us as far as policies go. So we'll go through and rank these in each bucket, I think. So in finance, we have, how many do we have?
7.
7.
Let me make this, I know it's gonna be a little small, but actually, you know what? I don't know if this is smart enough to auto resize.
That was the farther ones, I don't think. Let's try that.
All right, give me a second. I'll
Copy
rescale
paste
some
a
of
new
this stuff.
tab real quick.
I'll just,
It's like a master tab.
yeah, I'll just do this. I'll be able to fit it. This is the only one that's like really long. I think we're good.
So, I mean, and feel free to anyone to jump in here. I think the purchasing policy, the policy on the engineer and solicitor communication, we have that pretty well handled, I think.
I would agree.
So those are kind of
Done.
the purchasing policy, I think
I have a star on that personally,
It's
and I know that's the
probably-
committee's.
that's probably number 1, unless anyone else is seeing something different there.
Purchasing policy number 1.
Yeah.
Oh, and I see a lot of you writing a whole bunch of stuff down. I'm not discouraging you from taking notes, but this will get distributed to all of you, so you don't need to
Yeah.
rely on memory.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's very helpful. Yeah, I think the fund balance and sewer fund repayment policies, those need to be addressed before we really get into high gear budget season. So they're maybe not in the necessarily in the next 2 months, but they're up there.
Sick and holiday time policy might be something we tackle with us hiring in the next few months. Is maybe a higher priority, maybe not as difficult, but a higher priority.
Yeah,
So I'd say
could
2 for that.
Yeah,
And then
Makes
just to
sense.
kind of move on to the next set, the part-time police officer benefits and policies and minimum fund balance and sewer fund repayment, I think would all be like a 3. I don't know if we're doing,
that Yeah, we can do it that way.
And we can always
Um,
readjust once we get beyond 1 and 2, maybe reassess later. But to start, I think that those would be
Yeah.
my order.
Yeah, if we can, yeah, it's really just focusing on what are the top 1 or 2 priorities in each category. The rest can kind of be the same level if we need to. So public safety, we have a ticketing policy, maintenance of private property, parking enclosures of South Avenue, and warming center policy. It's tough.
I'd say public safety would be priority. So if we can see if any of these that we see together look like public safety to address first, it's like a 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I don't.
I mean, we're in the throes of winter, so it feels to me like,
18 and 24.
maybe we do the parking enclosures
18,
policy.
24. So parking enclosures 18, Ray, and warming center.
Yeah,
I mean, just because
that makes sense.
that's a now thing.
Plus, this is just a place to start. We can always reassess these.
And then this one, I would say this maintenance of private property, that one, like, I mean, that's also a now, we need to be thinking about that one. I don't know that it's above these other ones. Maybe that's a 2, but it's big. So that's like a start now, but maybe,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I don't know. What are we calling that one? A 1, a 2? 1,
2.
2. Okay, and then this ticketing policy, 3.
Probably a 3. I think it has relatively low impact compared to the others.
Yep.
Infrastructure, asset management.
Trish. It's 1, 2, or 3.
But sorry, not trying to cut you off. I'll just say that the capital replacement policy is kind of like the maintenance of private property. It's a big one. It's going to take some time. It's not going to be developed right away, but it's something that could be started.
It's clearly the most important and the largest, as you said. I was thinking emergency rock salt. Because of like the other
Timely.
ones.
Winter, yeah, that makes sense.
So I would say capital safety 2 and then solar skating.
When do we anticipate the gas company will be in town for First Street from Word on the Street? I only asked to see if we should reassess if that's a 2 or not, if that's coming up.
You mean if they're gonna replace the lines?
Yeah, and move
That was
it.
just an email that I got from someone that worked there. Nothing was definite for sure, and I haven't seen that fellow. So who knows if it's even for sure,
Yeah,
but nobody,
That's still a good point though, because that would be easier to complete for getting the throws of the other.
Or
ones.
water line breaks that Oakmont, the Water Authority could abide by that if something were to burst this winter or spring that,
you gotta
policy is in
realize a lot
place.
of stuff on this too, when it comes to the paving. There's nobody making asphalt this time of the year. So a lot of this stuff, time-wise, is gonna be delayed for the final product because nobody is making asphalt this time of the year.
yeah.
True.
So
Too
that's
cold?
something to think of too. What's that?
Too cold?
Yeah, just a little.
Yeah, and
I
there's
mean, they
nothing,
make it as long as they can, but
there's nothing to say that the committees can't work on all 3, start working on all 3,
right.
and or all of, as many as they can. But this is just to kind of identify, so the council knows, the rest of the council knows, and so the committee members know kind of what the focus, what the critical ones are. So I think we're good there. Communications. How many do we have? 5.
5.
Fourth one.
2 sign policies, communications plan, responses from public, from all of council, and a street closure policy. So I think,
It's shared, cut off. Yeah, so they're
We
shared.
meet right back to back, so there will be thoughts.
yeah. So,
Contact responses to public, just so we're consistent from the start of the year.
yeah, that might be an easy one too. I mean, yeah, the communication plan is highlighted, that should be started, but it's going to be a bigger effort. The sign policies for cribs and ARB, those would probably be nice to get in by spring when they start using cribs more.
Yeah, I think that's high on the list.
Yeah.
Both of them.
And those should be
And
pretty,
they're hand in hand.
Yeah.
There will need to be two separate policies because we own cribs.
yeah,
and we don't own Steel City. So we're
Yeah.
the RCO of the service agreement with the cities.
but you can work on both of them together. Yeah. So-
And we will make our own service policy. But I think those are pretty high on the list.
So, okay. Do we have rankings?
So
there?
what's gonna get a 1?
I think,
Maybe the communication plan. Honestly.
That's also like the capital, and it's like, it's gonna be a huge ongoing.
yeah, it's gonna take a little
The big
while,
ones we
but
should start
Right.
and then
Try to get
work
out.
on the sign policy. We can knock the sign policies out, but we need to start the communication plan.
Do we need to prioritize street closure since that's a hot topic of debate and it's still
pretty
winter,
sure.
it's still winter, so we're not really closing the street now, but as soon
Street
as it's
closure
not,
is gonna be,
is that a 1?
that's gonna be a 1 for.
I think you can say for both.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a 1.
But I'm gonna work on, it's on my agenda for tomorrow.
Yeah.
So,
And then after that, I mean, those two that could both be 2s and the other 2 be 3s. I don't know.
The
They kind of,
responses to public when emails come, like that's going to be easy one to address and then move on to if it's at the top of the list. I would think so.
And that's something that we'll make a policy, but it'll probably be encompassed in the communication plan. So it'll probably be a little encompassed. But we're gonna need a policy immediately going forward. On the last part. But that's-
Yeah.
It'll probably also be covered in the communication plan as a whole. If you understand.
And Sylvia, as chair, do you have any comments or insight on the priority for these? I don't know if you can see the full screen share.
I see almost all of it, Joey. Thank you. Right
Yeah.
now, some of the stuff, because it's winter, it's not like an instant mandate that we do it right away. But like in the spring, the 2 signs, that's when things start happening. I mean, we can plan them now, but they're not critical at this minute is what I feel. Because in a winter, there isn't a whole lot going on. Street closures, to me, that's important. It's winter and maybe there are some streets that'll have to be closed. So I think right now that might be a number 1,
okay.
or even responses to the public and let them know what's going on.
Yep.
And
Okay.
the others, they're more a different season. I don't know that they would be a critical this minute. We have to plan on all of this, but right now I think street closures are critical because of the winter weather and responding to the public.
Community use. Yeah, just for clarity's sake, Sylvia, the street closure policy would be for community events and communicating for those closures. Not necessarily the safety of street closures temporarily for south, which is what I think you're referencing.
Oh, excuse me. Okay.
That's all right.
true.
Still a priority, just a different column, but so we're saying the same thing.
But I do agree with you, Sylvia. Street closure should be addressed as soon as possible because
Right.
we've had a couple of public comments and things going on that it needs addressed.
Yep.
All right.
All right, so recreation, community events. Yeah, street closure policy is number 1.
Sign policy. Oh, no.
I would, I would say,
Policy on using council chambers and park rental are almost the same thing. They're both
Yeah,
assets. They
yeah.
can be tied for whatever number that
I
ends up
think
being.
that's 2, yeah. And then 3 would be the playground opening policy.
yeah, I mean, I would almost say that should be a little bit higher up just because,
If we can knock it out, because there's already a policy. We just need to.
yeah, so,
We might be able to cover that. One of them.
We can just make them all 2s.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. They could all be 2s,
As
because,
long as the street closure policy is number 1,
yeah,
all the other ones are pretty easy and we'll knock them
Yes, that's exactly how I felt. That should be number one.
Community development, that's an easy one,
What do you guys think?
because it's a big one. It's one big one, but it's, we know what priority that is in that category, so. I know that community development may be the one with the least number of policies right now. I do think that committee is gonna have plenty to look at, soon enough. There's gonna be more coming that way.
Make sure that's what's gonna follow.
All right, everyone
Very
good with
productive.
this. I appreciate the input. Everyone gave good feedback. I hope everyone's good with this. So I think we all agree.
Yeah,
These are policies we need. These are the priorities. This gives the committees, a little bit more of an agenda for the upcoming meetings, hopefully. And I just want to recap, when the committees, when you're doing research, check in with Christine, make sure she doesn't already have the information you need, or you're not duplicating efforts. She may have information readily available. She may have done some research already. She may have talked to residents. So just keep her in the loop when you're researching some of these things, and especially if you're reaching out to, if you do need to reach out to outside municipalities, other neighboring municipalities or agencies for any of these, in the development of the policies, please copy Christine or make her aware so that she's in the loop. If those agencies or municipalities reach out to the borough, she's probably going to be the first point of contact. And just to recap again, what's on the committee sheet that everyone has, just to remind everyone what committees are not. They're not departments. Committees do not direct employees or consultants what to do. Committees do not apply for or administer grants. And committees do not carry out official action on behalf of the borough or on council. So just a reminder there, if there are things that need those kinds of action, that's where it comes back to all of council. So this is to kind of present a draft, draft policies and something to talk about at a future workshop meeting. So moving on, the next two items are, the policies for engaging with the engineer and the solicitor. Christine.
These both are pretty quick. We did talk about this a bit in executive session prior to this meeting because it does relate to, individual people and how the borough engages individual people. The long and short of it is there are a couple of policies drafted that will be action items for the business meeting, pending any additional feedback from council, that effectively streamlines the communication process through the administrative office, such that we're not duplicating requests for professional services and therefore able to save some money. For those of you that tuned in to the budget discussions, we did trim the solicitor and the engineer budgets a bit to help balance the budget. And so avoiding duplication is one way to cut down on those costs. So that'll be forthcoming in the business meeting. There's not a whole lot else to say about that. Let me just move on to the next one.
Go for it.
The next item is Cribs Field marquee sign and billboard on ARB. We now know because we just had a big discussion about policies. There is a request on the table. LVAF has requested to put on the Cribs marquee sign a vacancy for the board. And so the question is, are we ready to make a decision about that? Given that a policy is not written, are we willing to do a one-off decision? And if so, we'll need to make a decision on that. And then if not, then, that's also a decision in the short term, and we'll just need to figure out what's going on from there. So I guess that we need to figure out, are we deciding that tonight or de facto saying no until there's a policy written? And I defer to you all on that.
My only concern about doing a one-off without a policy on that is, are we going to set a precedent for other groups to use. And I would want to see more about how many, what's our capacity for messaging on that billboard where it gets to be oversaturated. Like, I don't know if we know that right at this moment. If we, and this is nothing against LVAF, this is if they get to use it here, are there going to be 10 other groups waiting with a case to say, hey, I should be able to use it too? And then do we get oversaturation in communications? And then people aren't really, we're not getting to use that. That's my only concern there. I'd like to see the policy and see what comes out of developing the policy, but that's just my 2 cents.
The only other 2 cents I would add to it from my perspective on the admin side, as the keeper of the sign, it is easy to use the software. I'm not saying it's hard. It's not, but it does take time. It does take, to make it look decent, because it's not really plug and play. You have to actually create the slides. And then of course, remember to take it down when time has elapsed. So there is some administrative time that's needed to meet those requests. And so then that becomes the other question is, does council feel that creating those slides and taking them down, et cetera, constitute a good use of my time, in my role as borough secretary? And that's for all of you to determine.
Go.
That's another thing about a lot of this, and I have thought about it being an administrative drain. And this could also be a source of revenue for the borough. People don't get to advertise on the site for free. It would be a small fee, and I'm just kicking ideas out there. What we talk about, but there could be a small fee, nothing crazy, but just something for the borough to recoup their operating costs and maintenance of the sign. The sign will be maintained for a couple of years, and if we're letting all these people outside sources other than the borough use this sign, we should, in my eyes, be charging a small nominal fee because it's using your time and it's using electric. We have to pay electric on that every year, so we are looking into all aspects of that. I just don't want you to think about it.
You think there's time to pause and look at policy, because it looks like you're tackling that pretty soon coming anyways. Not that you're purchasing the transcript to see what the legal parameters were for use of this, the sign, but I would prefer, so we don't have a set precedent that we open this up. I don't know how I feel about charging for it though, because I believe it's just like an asset we'd have in the community, that people use
But
other
it is
pieces.
taking borough resources, electric and maintenance. and
Yeah.
Christine's time.
So I don't
and I'm
argue
not
with
saying like $5 a month or something, like just something to recoup operating costs.
Well, that's something that could be looked at. I don't know if charging then puts this into billboard territory where we are soliciting paid advertisements. I have no idea if that.
Well, that's why I want to see the transcripts
Well,
or the.
But
That might come into fact though, something with the off the rails one, how they were able to put their sign up, but only for their use.
Yeah.
Remember there was talk that
yeah,
somebody brought up and they aren't charging, they're just using it for their own advertising.
yeah. So I think that's something for the committee to look at. I mean, one possibility here, and I'm not saying that this is what it's got to be, and I, wait to see what the committee comes back with. But one possibility could be that the sign, the crib sign, is used just for borough affiliated, like strictly borough events, borough groups, whether it's one of the commissions, rec board, that sort of thing. I mean, that's just a possibility. And then it limits it limits the number of potential people that would be wanting to put stuff up there, and it would limit the amount of time that Christine spends on it. That's just a possibility. So
And we also need to list. We need to get the zoning here.
yeah. So that's all part of. So I guess if we're all okay with it, I think we table that, making a decision about allowing that until there's a policy in place. That would be my recommendation based on the feedback I'm hearing from other council members.
I think it makes sense, yeah.
So, okay.
Did you want to take this one?
Yeah, I'll take a shot at this one. So the playground policy, we talked about this earlier. Basically covers Cribs Field, doesn't cover the playgrounds at Cribs at Riverbank. That was brought to my attention recently is with the Riverbank playground being closed on a dry day in December. So I guess, there's two extremes here. We could have it open all the time in the winter, which, potentially opens up to having icy or snowy paths to the playgrounds, like especially at Cribs. There isn't, if we use that, if we have the field closed and locked and the side entrance to the playground open, there's not really a good path. It's kind of like that grassy hillside to get there. Is that something that is going to be a hazard if we were just leave it open any day in the winter? The other extreme is to just keep it closed like we seem to be doing now. I think that limits a lot of children being able to access the playground in the winter when right now the weather's not great, but in 2 weeks it could be 50 degrees and sunny. So I think we end up getting a lot of days where the playground's totally usable. We can keep the fields locked, and so that I was thinking if there's something, maybe a compromise in the middle where along with the rest of the policy for opening and closing Cribs, we say that the playgrounds get open on certain days under certain weather conditions, maybe when no snow or ice is present, in order to limit any potential liability to the borough if and to limit the need for the public works crew to have to add one more thing for them to maintain, which I don't think that's something we should necessarily add.
Particularly this year, given the situation going on up on Ridge, where they've been up there numerous times to clear the ice and just handle that. So I would be concerned about putting extra things on, given that they already have extra things this winter.
Or expectations. Go ahead.
I think that's why originally we didn't have that policy. I wasn't on council then, but I remember when we talked about it. You drain on resources, because now you have to ask the police to be weather reporters instead, and that's why we went with, I believe last winter, we just left it open. That way, police don't have to rub there. If it's nice out, and lock it, or if it's snowing, or if it snows in the morning and then later on in the day, all the snow's melted, they go up and unlock it halfway through the day. So, the liability issue is, it's a problem, but you also have a liability if you do lock it. If you do lock it and it's a nice day, I've lived here my whole life, you'll have people climbing underneath the fence. And then you can't see if they're in the park or not, because the sliding board and everything is in the way. So when police are driving by on 2nd Street, they can't tell if anybody's in the playground. Even if it's locked, people will climb under the fence to be in that playground. So I don't know the answer. I'm just saying that that's why last winter, we just opened the playgrounds up for the whole winter, because they were going to get into it.
So when the committee looks at the policy for this, I'd like for them to consider also the other parks, because I think if we do, it's going to be season of year and then time of day and then condition also. We don't want to invest in, planting seed ourselves and putting grass and doing these things and then have people ride bikes or run through it or roll strollers over it, not knowing the damage. Well, hold on. We're damaging the property itself, but also we don't want to imply that if we unlock the gate that we're also going to wipe down playground equipment, we're going to salt walkways, or we're going to shovel the basketball court or the pickleball court, or also allow any individual or a group to think that they're okay to go in and shovel the surface of the pickleball court or the basketball court, and then we have to paint it sooner than we anticipated. or for them to think that, someone uses it and they are well intended to kind of fix what they've done on their own to replant seed or move things around and kind of take ownership of it in what they're doing. So I think this policy is going to have to be bigger than maybe what we realize, even beyond cribs.
So, yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. It could encompass other, opening, closing of other park facilities. So
Even the docks, I mean, if that railway has the chain going across it, you could definitely walk under it. But if our policy is that you can't go onto our public docks unless it's, this time of day during the season, we can at least extend the liability to someone else. So I want to make sure that the committee, when they look at this, it's not just the use of cribs Field or playgrounds, but it's the other playgrounds too and other properties people might use for recreation, fenced or not fenced.
So do we think that this could go to the committee? And I just as far as timeliness, I mean, do we think that we could have a recommendation to act on by the next meeting, or does this need more time to percolate? Like, I was going to suggest, at least for the playground aspect of this, I was going to suggest that we have a rule that if there's snow or ice present, keep it locked. Otherwise, any day in the winter, open it. And that sort of mirrors the policy that's existing for cribs as far as when things get locked or unlocked and who opens it. But again, you bring up some good points about the docks and other things to incorporate. So I don't, just trying to.
Said just there, those are the recommendations.
Okay.
If there's snow or ice present, then the parks will remain locked.
Yeah, I mean, that keeps it simple.
I know.
They don't have to, I want to.
It became not simple.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
think we can try to get this done at the next meeting. Talk about it tomorrow.
well, yeah, deal with
Put
it
on
in the
agenda,
committee
and
and
if it needs pushed.
given that, we're still in winter, we're going to be in winter for a couple more months. If this is something that's going to be ready for the next meeting, maybe we put it on. If not, we push it to the next meeting. But all right, that's really. Does anyone else have anything on?
Dave,
Matt?
I just have a very simple, what seems simple to me, solution. It's winter. How many kids are really outside when it's 20 degrees or 25? I would just think that it would be best to close all these parks because you're looking at safety of people going there and also damaging property when you don't really have to. Just set a policy, we're closed all of January, all of February, and then let's see what it's like, say the middle of March when things start to kind of thaw out. That's just my personal feeling because I'm looking at it as safety toward people going there or people damaging our property.
Well, I appreciate the feedback, Sylvia. I think there are a lot of kids that play. I mean, maybe not when it's 20 degrees, but when it's 30, 40 degrees, there's kids. I mean, I think my daughter's daycare has a policy. If it's above 25 or 30 degrees, they're outside. So that's definitely a thing with kids. But that's something the committee can look at.
That's why we're doing this.
So
That was the policy. It was to close the parks all winter. And then we had a lot of.
I guess I felt we were in the deep of winter. I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of complaints.
And I
about
just
that.
thought maybe
That's why we.
just to be safe to close it and be done with it, but I'm flexible.
okay, well, the committee
willing
can
to-
review it. You
I'm
and
willing to work with it, Dave.
you and Vince and Trish can come up with the recommendation and bring it back to the full council, and we'll go from there.
Okay,
So,
I'm willing to work with it, no problem.
okay,
That was just
thank
a
you.
personal suggestion. That was not in stone, believe me.
All right, the next item is censor for the sign at Cribs.
Yeah,
Christine.
so this, I bring this to your attention to kind of get the pulse of interest in this before we send Matt looking to do more research, and also given that we're doing all of our action items by resolution now, whether we would need a resolution for the business meeting. So Matt let me know the other day that the sign company for the sign up of cribs wants to know if we want to install a sensor to the sign or on the sign that would automatically dim the sign depending on the ambient light. So right now it's a manual process, apparently. Apparently I'm supposed to be controlling. So it, you know, changes depending on the time of year as to when that sign needs to get dimmed. And this sensor it's about $400. And it would just, you know, sense how much light's there and then automatically adjust the sign so that it's never, you know, greater than X% of whatever the ambient light is at the time. Now, in terms of, so it is $400. I asked Matt if we still had money left in the grant, because once upon a time there was still money left, and he ran the numbers, and basically there's about, well, he estimates about $1,750 that we can still spend to max out the grant. So the grant was $200,000, and because of the match, we would have needed to spend $235,294 to get the full 200,000. So that's where the 1,750 comes from. Now there are still some plumbing issues up there in that the water pressure is like not quite right. And so that probably should be repaired. And so to get the booster pump to correct those flushing issues, Matt's estimating that to be in the range of $1,700 to $2,000. So on the low end, it eats basically everything that's left in the grant. On the high end, it's a little bit more. And so we'd be paying a couple $100 out of pocket to fix the plumbing. And then this $400 would be, you know, on top of that. So I just wanted to kind of get a pulse. Are you all interested in this sign? Do you want more information? Do we want to send Matt down this road of, you know, do we want to incur the engineering cost to get more information, or are we, you know, decided one way or the other before we keep on going?
When I was at the hearing, talking with Matt about the sign, they said that the sign could either be hooked up to a sensor or be programmed. Can the sign be programmed to dim at a certain time of day?
Yes, but it's manual though. So like in the
Once you set
winter,
the program, is it good for the year?
that I don't know, because I have yet to find that setting in the features.
I would suggest that you figure out that if we could program the sign yearly or bi-yearly, like every 6 months, like for 6 months, the sign dims at 7. And then for the other 6 months, the sign dims at 5. If we could program that, then we wouldn't need a sensor. Does everybody?
Yeah.
I have thoughts on that. Actually, I drive past that 5 days a week for my kids' bus stop a little bit before 7, and I don't think it's bright. I think in lieu of having a crossing guard, it's nice to be illuminated. I also think that with the policy set for use of the sign, when we get there, we might be able to see that, you know, I don't think it's bright. If people think it's too bright, possibly taking a look at that, you know, no more than 30% of the sign can be white space. So maybe we use graphics that only have so much white space, so it's not illuminating as much.
Well,
so there's a couple.
A zoning hearing board condition.
Yeah.
It had to be dimmed at an X amount, X time every day.
But I
So
would have to agree with Joey. I go in the morning when it's dark and,
Oh, I don't
you
think
know,
it's
in
bright
the
at all.
evening. I don't think it's bright.
I agree.
I think it's perfect. You could read it. None of the neighbors have complained, hey, this is, you know, annoying. It's too bright.
I'm just saying, if the zoning board said that we had to dim it, then we had to dim it.
You're correct. I don't know what they
Regardless
said.
if we think it's bright or not, if they said that it has to be dimmed at 8 from its normal setting, then we have to dim it at 8, or we have to appeal the zoning.
Well, when did the decision,
Like
when was the
2 months ago.
So
3
you've
months
already
ago.
waived your right to appeal about the zoning hearing board. So whatever's in the decision is the final decision.
I
And if it's
believe
not
that they-
addressed, then that's something different. But if they address what it should be at a certain time of day, then yes, you have to follow those protocols.
So we need to find a decision and then make sure that it's not in there.
Yeah,
It's not
so
in there, we don't have to do it, we don't even have to buy the sensor. I'm fine with it.
I think more likely than not, your zoning ordinance might address what lighting and what level of the lighting for the sign can be with ambient light. It'll probably already be regulated.
So it sounds like for next time, this is not an action item. This is a continue to do more research and just sort of see where things land.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And I
Great.
would
Sounds
hope that we don't spend money on sensor. We don't.
I was gonna say the same thing in my remarks. I wanted to also share that sounds like an upsell to something that
Yeah.
we should have had covered in the original cost. And I'd much prefer with the $1,700 remaining that we wait and make sure that pipes don't burst, or there's other things that need to be done with the $1,700, because I'd hate to, in the end, eventually have to pay $400 for a sensor. Even if we get average sunset sunrise times, I think there's a way for automation, as horrible as it might be to have one more thing to do, but hopefully we can have someone help with that in the near future.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right. The last of our discussion items, and then we'll move on to action items, is Sylvia's going to present the upcoming events and community communications.
Okay, I'll just be real quick with this. Newsletter, the ads and articles are due Tuesday, March 1st. The sooner you get them to us, the sooner we get them to the printer, and the sooner you get them in your mailbox. So if you can move on it, we'll really appreciate it. Chamber of Commerce, next meeting is going to be Tuesday, February 15th, 7 p.m. here in our Borough building. Historical Society is for February. It is actually scheduled for February 17th. It will be a movie, but this is strictly weather permitting. We're in the deep of winter now, and we just have to go day by day. But we will let you know in plenty of time if the Historical Society meeting's canceled. Twin Borough Ministries community dinner is scheduled for tomorrow evening, 4:30 to 6:30, hosted by Oakmont Presbyterian Senior Care. And it again will be a grab and go dinner, and they will have also on sale a variety of soups and applesauce. And lastly, ALOM, the last call for the annual banquet is which is going to be held at the Rivers Casino Event Center. Is going to be, that event is Saturday, February the 5th from 5:30 till 9. And tickets are $65, and the last day to purchase those tickets is this Thursday, January 27th. If anyone has an interest to reserve a ticket, the telephone number is 412-261-2521. And this is a wonderful event if anybody would like to go. We've gone in the past, and it was great. And in closing, I'm just going to ask if there's any questions or comments. And if not, this concludes my reports, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Yes, sir, you're welcome.
Moving on to our action items. The first one, I'll read these off, and then Christine, if you have anything to add,
Okay.
feel free. First one is a resolution Council of Borough of Verona to allow Lower Valley Athletic Foundation to use council chambers the first Wednesday of each month in 2022. Pretty straightforward.
Pretty straightforward. I just compared it to council meetings, committee meetings, and the one existing meeting with Garden Club. There were no conflicts, so.
I'll make that motion.
I'm on the LGF board still. I'm not president anymore, but I will abstain from voting on this.
Okay, so first from Mr. Suchovich, second from Mrs. Rejek Showalter. Any questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passed. The next is a resolution to advertise for a part-time administrative assistant. The Borough of Verona is committed to the professional administration of the borough activities. And whereas there is currently a need for additional administrative capacity that could be filled by hiring a part-time administrative assistant for up to 25 hours per week. You want to add anything, Christine?
No, I just want to reiterate my appreciation for the support of council and in filling this role to really increase capacity in the office.
I'll make that motion.
Second,
Okay, first by Mr. Suchovich, second by Mr. Flota. Any questions?
I just want to say, I think Christine's doing a wonderful job. And I think with the help of an assistant, she can get into on her core stuff, more core stuff, digging deep into stuff. And this other assistant can help do the nuts and bolts things.
That's a nice way of
Yep.
saying it.
No, she knows what she has to do.
I know.
I would also say Christine's doing a wonderful job. This was budgeted for. I also want to say that, as soon as we start, we're saving some monies as budgeted because we're not going to hire them on January 1st. So there's going to be slight cost savings depending on when we do hire the person. But I look forward to them complimenting the work Christine's doing to allow her to accelerate more, just as Ray just said.
I echo those comments. Anything else?
thanks
right,
for
all
being
those-
here, Christine. We appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sylvia.
You're welcome.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passed. Next motion is a resolution accepting the resignation of Trish Rezak Showalter from the Parks and Recreation Board and to advertise her resignation was effective February 4th, 2022. And we will also advertise on the borough website, the marquee sign at Crib Steel, that there's a vacancy on the board for which letters of interest will be accepted until February 28th, 2022. You have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Suchovich,
Second,
second by Mrs. Provenza. Any questions or comments?
Thanks for all the hard work you've done on that board.
I want to thank you for the 5 years you put on the Parks and Rec. As an inaugural, a fellow inaugural member, it was nice working with you, getting the Parks and Rec up and running.
Yes, thank you for your service.
thank you for serving, Trish. Good job.
Thank you.
I couldn't bring it to myself to make the motion for second.
With-
All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passed. The next one is resolution to renew the text messaging service with Jira Mobile. This would be resolved, the Borough of Verona would renew the contract for 2022 with Jira Mobile to provide text messaging services for the borough at a cost of $2,950.
I have a question.
Second,
Is that per year?
Let's get in the seconds first and then.
Hold on. So first by Rhoda, second by
Ray Suchovich.
Mr. Suchovich. Okay, any questions or comments?
I just want to, is that monthly or yearly?
So that is annually, that,
I just wanted to make sure the public knows.
yeah,
$2,950 per year.
Yeah, so the billing period, I believe, is from February, it would be from February 1st, because our current agreement expires the end of this month. And this would be for February 1st, 2022 through January 31st, 2023, as I understand. Is that correct, Christine?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Curtis
Curtis
is
is
affirming
here.
on- Yeah.
I didn't know, Dave, if you wanted to, I know this is like a little out of the ordinary, but I think, sorry, Curtis, I think we didn't communicate to you. You were supposed to speak way in the beginning on,
Right.
so here we are, but Curtis has some additional information about the service that might be useful for everybody to know. And so I know it's not parliamentary procedures, but if we can just let him speak, that might be also beneficial in making a decision.
Yeah, he's the service provider, so he should, feel free, Curtis, to share any information you wish to add.
Sure. So, good evening, everyone. We actually got some information regarding the voice phone calls that can go out. we were able to find the service that could do that. So not only will we have the text messaging, but we will have the voice as well. So that'll go out as a call when someone picks up, they'll hear the message. There would be no charge for the year of 2022, and we would consider that to be in the building phase. And what we would do is take a look at, probably around October, maybe at a workshop meeting, to take a look at what we're looking at regarding subscriber numbers at that particular point. And then we would take a look at moving forward is what the charges would be. There's a fee structure listed. And to kind of give you an idea, one call outgoing equals 1 credit. So based upon the number of subscribers, you kind of divide that into how many messages you send out a month. So we need to really take a look at how many subscribers we'll get over the next couple months to really take a look at what it's going to be for 2023. The platform is really feature rich. Christine, of course, will be able to do everything that's needed with mobile app access. There'd be multiple logins in case someone else needed to have the ability to publish messages in the case that Christine was not able to. There are several ways to do the messages from any phone, whether it's landline or mobile phone. They also have text-to-speech feature, and you can also use the mobile app that's provided. Outgoing messages, and we want to be really specific on this, outgoing messages can be 30 seconds long, and that considers it to be 1 message. When it goes over that, then it considers it to be 2 messages, so you're being doubly charged. So we can walk through that process as well to make sure each message is under the allotted time. And we don't want the message to be too long anyway. If it's too long, when someone's listening to the message, then that's like a long text message. They don't want to hear that. How residents sign up via the website, social media link. We can upload the numbers via a CSV file or Excel spreadsheet, or we can do it manually as well. So if someone calls and says, hey, I'd like messages, can you put my phone number in? We can do that onesie, twosie if they don't know how to do it via the website. So it really kind of captures each way for anyone to sign up for the messages.
This is Councilman Moore, and I want to say I appreciate the added voice message service for our community. I know that's an enhancement to something we can't measure. But speaking of things we can measure, if you could help us by, not now, I don't know if you have it in front of you, but the current subscription number right now. And then I urge residents to sign up your spouses, your neighbors, help the elderly if they want to offer their landline number. And in the case that we do have to communicate, the voicemail goes out. This is something that will be beneficial to everybody.
Can you also put that on a banner on our website?
How to sign up? Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, we could do that as well.
Yeah, so community newsletters for anyone in the community groups that are attending tonight, share with your memberships. Let people know this is another asset that the community has to offer to help some of those that don't use a cell phone or would benefit from having to go to a landline. Thanks for all this data. I really appreciate it, Curtis.
Sure.
Yes, thank you for this information. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions or comments from council about this before the vote?
Glad to see the upgrade.
I just want to reiterate, it's $2,950 a year, not a month.
Was somebody think it was a month?
Somebody will.
Oh.
So I'm trying to put out a fire before it starts.
Yeah.
You know what I wanted to say, I'm glad Vince brought that up. To be clear, the 2,900 is only this year because of the 10 DLC provision that we need to do. Ongoing, it's $2,200 per year. So 2023 will be $2,200, but we will have the additional voice on that as well. But it will not be $2,900 for each additional year.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Curtis. If you could actually provide that to us in advance of our October, September planning for our budget, that would be helpful for us to consider.
Sure, definitely.
So we can adopt it in a more timely manner on our side.
Yep.
Okay. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nope. All right. Motion passed.
Thank you, Curtis.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Curtis.
Thanks, Curtis.
The next one is a resolution. Sorry, let me get to it here. The next one is the resolution the Borough of Verona to enter an agreement with the Verona Garden Club related to watering the 2022 spring and summer hanging baskets. This reads, the Borough of Verona is committed to supporting community groups to the extent that funding allows. The Garden Club provides beautification to the borough. The Borough of Verona appreciates the efforts of the Garden Club to make and support the hanging baskets that beautify the borough for residents and visitors. Be it resolved, the Council of the Borough of Verona will support the Garden Club for the 2022 spring, summer hanging baskets in the manner outlined in the attached agreement. So I'll let Christine, do you want to summarize this?
Sure, and I should just preface this to say this is probably the first time that members of the Garden Club are hearing about this, unless anybody on council who's part of Garden Club may have just, mentioned some of these things. So, I don't know the exact procedure. Chelsea, maybe you can advise, so we can vote on the resolution, but then at the end of the day, Garden Club's also going to need to agree, or do we need to sign the agreement and then do the resolution? Probably should have asked that prior to
Well,
tonight.
You can pass the resolution that this is the way you want it to follow. If the Garden Club doesn't want to sign off on it, then they're not watering baskets. So that's kind of, this is what you're providing to them. So if you pass this resolution, if they don't want to sign off on it, then it's not a valid agreement, but that's what you're offering as your offer of a contract.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So Dave, did you want me to just read it?
Sure.
Okay, so this agreement made this 25th day of January 2022 by and between the Borough of Verona, the Borough, and the Verona Garden Club. Whereas the Borough is committed to supporting local community groups, including the Garden Club, to the extent that local funding allows, particularly when the groups provide beautification of the borough for the enjoyment of residents and visitors alike. Whereas the Garden Club may need some assistance with safely hanging and taking down the flower baskets at the beginning and end of the season, approximately June to mid-October. Now, therefore, the borough and the Garden Club do agree as follows. The borough will utilize the Department of Public Works to hang the flower baskets on the borough poles up to approximately 44 baskets in the month of June or thereabouts, and will take down the baskets in approximately mid-October. The Garden Club will water the baskets utilizing either volunteers or a paid service. If the volunteers and/or the paid service fail to water the flowers during the season and the flowers appear unsightly, the borough retains the right to remove the baskets from the poles for disposal. The borough will not assume responsibility for watering the baskets during the season. The borough will hang and remove the baskets once during the season. The Garden Club will be responsible for inspecting the baskets and ensuring that the baskets are ready to be hung before the borough hangs the baskets. The borough will do its best to hang the baskets on a schedule that is agreeable to the Garden Club, but will not interfere with emergencies or scheduled operations to hang said baskets. For example, street cleaning will not be canceled to hang the baskets instead. At the end of the season, the borough will take down the baskets, but will not handle or dispose of plant material, nor will the borough store the baskets in borough-owned property. The Garden Club agrees that any individual watering baskets is a volunteer of the Garden Club, and as such, the Garden Club hereby waives any liability of the borough related directly or indirectly to the watering of the baskets, and to the extent liability against the borough is asserted, the Garden Club shall save, indemnify, and hold the borough harmless on the same. And then in witness thereof, the parties hereby execute this agreement, intending to be legally bound on the date first written above, and there are places for the borough and the Garden Club to sign.
I make the motion to resolve this.
Okay.
Second.
First by Mr. Warren, second by Mr. Suchovich. Any questions or comments?
Appreciate the Garden Club and their efforts, and they're very tightened up. They did a great presentation. I look forward to the borough having their added beautification. Thank you.
Yeah, I think what we're trying to do and what this does is help establish a written policy about what the borough is doing and what the volunteers are doing here. And I think it should help alleviate some of the issues in the past where there were concerns about, there were personnel issues within the borough, and there were, it was unclear who was responsible for what, and things came up at the last minute, and the communication wasn't the best in the past, and we're hoping that this will help establish that so that we're all on the same page about who's doing what for this effort, and also trying to be mindful of the taxpayer resources that are involved in supporting this effort. So I appreciated everyone's patience in working through this, and I hope that the Garden Club will be amenable to this. Any other comments or questions? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passed. The last one is pretty simple. It's a resolution to set the hourly wages for part-time police officers, police secretary, and school crossing guards within the borough. Whereas the Verona Borough Council budgeted for a 3% increase in hourly wages for the part-time police officers, police secretary, and school crossing guards for 2022. Therefore, be it resolved, the Council of the Borough of Verona authorizes the Borough Secretary to make payroll adjustments retroactive to January 1st, 2022 for said employees in the amount of a 3% increase in hourly wages. So basically, we budgeted for this as part of our 2022 budget, and we didn't actually have a policy or any kind of authorization for Christine to make the changes in the payroll to have that take effect. So we're kind of formalizing that here, and authorizing her to make that adjustment.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All right, first by Mr. Warren, second by Mr. Suchovich. Any questions or comments?
Thanks for their service to the police officers, the secretary, and the crossing guards in the community. Appreciate your help, your work.
Yes, thank you, and I second that. Any others? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passed. That concludes our action items. I believe our solicitor, Chelsea Dice, has statement.
Sure. So I guess there's been some concerns, complaints, notices to the municipality regarding a resident on the North Avenue. And it is my understanding this individual has special needs, is renting the residence, and has care workers that are around the clock. So some of the issues that arose were how this individual, whether there's been alleged abuse by the caregivers. There has been contact with the, what's the name of that?
Adult social services.
Adult social services.
Through the county.
Through Allegheny County. So there has been a report. They've checked into this. It has been determined to be unfounded. However, if residents are concerned for this individual, or if they see some type of abuse, that you should always go and make a report. I've suggested, and I think Christine's going to put on the website, the Child Protective Services, which I can provide to you the contact information, as well as for adults. So anytime that you see something like this, not even for this individual, but anybody else, you'll have the opportunity. You can go to the website, find a link, and make that call. With respect to throwing garbage and yelling, this individual, I guess, has done that as well with neighbors. Unfortunately, that is not something the municipality will regulate. It is in the sense of from a municipal standpoint. It comes down to a police matter. If any individual, whether you have special needs or whether you do not, if someone's throwing garbage in onto somebody else's property and that property owner does not want that to be there, they can pursue claims for trespass, either civilly or criminally, as well as possibly harassment or disorderly conduct. So again, the municipality cannot regulate those things from the council's end. This has to come from the police. They have to issue citations and go through the appropriate process. We don't discriminate against whether the individual has a mental health issue, whether they have, they don't. So it's a clear, it's non-biased, whatever the incident or the behaviors are, you follow through and file the appropriate complaints with the police, and then they go forward and determine whether to charge or not to charge. With respect to zoning, this instance, after reading all the case law concerning this individual, we had a similar case in Plum Borough. That actually the way the case law reads for this individual is he's actually living in a single family residential home. It's not a group home. And so any of our regulations and things like that with respect to group homes doesn't apply to this individual because he's a single family resident and he's by himself. I know he may have care workers around the clock. However, that should not change the municipality's decision of whether or not this is a group home or not. So again, the municipality has no standing to require additional conditions on this person. We can't treat him any differently. You know, there's cases that suggest in one case that was litigated in another municipality that our law firm represented, it came down to whether or not under the Fair Housing Act, it was unlawful to discriminate when you are selling or renting a home to an individual if they have disabilities or they don't have disabilities. You have to treat that person the same regardless of whether there is a disability or not. And so in this instance, the case came down that said, essentially in this scenario, this person is living in a single family residential home and we can't change that. I think if people have concerns, again, about abuse, you call the appropriate hotline. If there is yelling and screaming out in the street, just like any other individual yelling and screaming, if it's a nuisance, then you call the police and they can cite and go through the appropriate process. Unfortunately, or fortunately, as I said to council before, it's a constitutional right to live there. We live in a country that allows for that. And so, you have to go through appropriate processes. If there's an individual, or I don't know who his family members are that maybe could intervene, but I think going through, and if he's cited for doing something, some type of behavior that is illegal, that might be the appropriate mechanism to maybe open other doors to get him to other facilities that maybe this residence is not the appropriate placement for him, given these behaviors. But again, that's not for council to decide, unfortunately. We want him to be protected. If our police see him out there or if he's on the roof, again, we're going to respond. But it is not, we can't do anything from a zoning standpoint. And the litigation that we were involved in years ago in another municipality, it was substantially, the verdict that was rendered, the amount of attorney's fees that were just paid just for trying to remove an individual, which was characterized as a group home, was over $125,000. And that was just for the attorney's fees that the municipality had to pay, in addition to other fees, because the court determined that we were being discriminatory against a disabled person. So I understand there has been a lot of complaints that people are concerned about this individual. And again, you got to keep on reporting. The only way he's going to get the appropriate help is to continue to report. And so I think just like the police are mandated reporters. If you see something that appears to be inappropriate, you can report that to the adult, what's it called again? The
Adult social services.
adult social service. So I know also that he's been cited. We're treating him just the same as any other individual. If you're, banging on cars and denting cars, that's property damage, then you have to be cited for property damage. I don't know what the end all be all result will be for this situation. But again, the municipality, their hands are tied. This is between, and if the garbage throwing over I saw videos of garbage being thrown over a fence, that's between the property owner beside him. If they want to file trespass actions against, or some type of harassment action, that's between the two property owners. We unfortunately cannot get involved in those types of situations. So from my legal perspective, we have done what we can. He's appropriately living there, occupancy permits have been issued, those types of things. As long as he's abiding by the law there, from our municipal perspective, we can't do much more. It has to go to the police, and then you guys have to just report to the appropriate authorities when there's inappropriate behavior.
I'd just like to add too, our regular attorney, Craig Alexander, he basically has told us and the audience the same thing that you did. Continue to call the police. I know it's frustrating. This whole entire board is frustrated also because our hands are tied. And continue to call the police so we continue to have records, and continue to call it the adult social service of Allegheny County. And, and hopefully they'll get tired of the phone calls and maybe they'll turn it to another department. Like the solicitor said, our hands are tied. So please continue to do what you're doing. I know it's very frustrating.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Chelsea, for that.
Sure.
Much appreciated. We are now going to turn to public comments. So council will now hear comments from the public at this time. Please raise your virtual hand, clearly state your name and address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
We have 3 guests. We go to the first one, which is Kelly Rodriguez.
Okay, go ahead.
Kelly, you are unmuted and you have your 3 minutes. Oh, you're gonna have to unmute yourself, actually. Okay, I've selected that. Kelly, if you can hear me, if you could unmute yourself, it is your turn to speak. Okay, we're going to move to the next public comment and then we'll come back to Kelly. Our next registered resident is Nancy.
Hi there. Can
Hello.
you hear me? Can you
Yes,
hear me?
thank you.
Okay. I just had a couple of quick questions. They're time sensitive.
Nancy,
Name and
please.
address, please, for public comment.
All right, Nancy Carpenter, 222 Arch Street.
Thank you.
I'm out of the habit. Quick questions for clarification. They're time sensitive, so hopefully the answers are very simple. My first question, and just to let you know, we had a very, very hard time hearing the people on the ends of the dais, Vince and Rhoda and Trish a little bit too. I don't know if there's a computer setting or something, but it was acting like as if those mics at the ends were not working. So my one question, because I couldn't hear what Vince was saying, Vince, were you saying something about that you were talking to Sylvia and that you guys might have a meeting tomorrow, the 4th Wednesday of January?
Yes, the Communication and Recreation Committee is meeting tomorrow.
Okay, so my question is, my understanding from before I left was that the committee meetings were going to be advertised and that the other council members and the public could come to the committee meetings. And I'm wondering if you meet tomorrow, if you know, if those meetings have been advertised or not. So I'll just go to my second question, and then you guys can just, you know, clarify that for me. And the other thing about the committee meetings is there going to be a Zoom option for them? Are they going to be all Zoom? Where are they going to be meeting? That kind of thing. And I just need clarification about the rec board vacancies, because I resigned at the last meeting, and back in December, we had said that we would take letters of interest until January 31st. So are we having all of the vacancies for rec board now be pushed back to February 28th, or is one for January 31st and the other one February 28th? So that's all I have. Thank you.
My
Thanks.
mic is working now. I don't know if you
Go
can hear
ahead.
me.
So we close the comments from Nancy. Thank you, President.
Yeah, Christine, do you want to address that?
I will, Vince, I'll just need to check in with you about whether you're doing Zoom or you're doing in person, and I can post something to the website in some location, probably just the homepage right now, because there's no good place to put any of this information on the current website. The ad was sent in to the newspaper. It's running on the 27th. And the question about Parks and Rec vacancies, I mean, slightly moot because we've gotten no applicants for Parks and Rec. So I'm sure we can keep taking things until the end of February. But there have been no applicants to have a cutoff on for the end of this month.
Okay, so to clarify though, if the advertising hasn't gone out for the committee meetings, should they be having committee meetings before they're advertised?
Chelsea, I'll defer to you on that.
No, you should wait until you have to do it on the date in which you advertise for the committee meeting. So if they were, I don't know what was your advertisement today?
What was my advertisement?
How was it phrased? Like when is it scheduled for?
It's very generic. So it says like first Wednesday, second Wednesday, whatever it happens to be. So
Down here.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's not all of these ones that are printed on the agenda, because we don't need to advertise the COG, things like that. But like where it says finance committee, it would just say first Monday at 7 p.m.
Yeah, so you can't have a committee meeting without it being advertised. So you would have to wait until the date in which.
So,
Well, let me ask a question.
We used to not make them open to the public though. So
Yeah, but
how does
it's
that
my
work?
Understanding, Nancy just said that did you pass a resolution stating that you would advertise these previously?
Oh, did we pass a resolution? I'd have to.
I don't know.
Let me look.
Well, worst case scenario, we're going to stall the progress we had till it's been advertised for the amount of time that's been requested by our residents. So I think that
So at
if
least
anything,
to the
we just
27th.
pause any activity or any progress we had and just wait till next month if that's necessary then.
Really, you just need to wait until Thursday, because the ad will run on Thursday.
So to the 27th, and then you can
Correct.
start.
And how long does the ad need to run?
It usually is twice. But I'd have to look at the statute.
That wasn't communicated to me, that had to run twice.
I'd have to look at the statute. Usually for a public meet, let me pull it up. Give me a minute, Nancy. Go on to the next thing.
I was going to
and I'll look
say
it up.
we'll advance.
Okay, we'll come back.
President, would you like me to go to Kelly?
Sure, go back to Kelly if she's available.
Thank you. Kelly, we can see you now, and I'm sorry, we can hear you now.
Sorry, guys. The reason I'm asking, just to be clear, is because the Finance Committee is scheduled to meet on the first Monday, which is February 7th. And I don't know if the advertising is enough days in order to have that meeting.
Oh, absolutely. That was well more than advance. You only need 24 hours. I just
Okay,
see it
great.
has
Thank
two,
you.
If you have to do 2 or 1.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
We did not pass a resolution on that.
Okay, then you're fine.
We can make them up.
You could technically meet tomorrow, but my recommendation would be, since you're advertising that you're having committee meetings starting whatever these dates are, whether first Wednesday, second Wednesday, whatever it is, I'd recommend following that because you're being transparent about that's when you're holding them. And because you've allowed, if you've had public there in the past, even though you've had,
We have in the past.
you have not,
This is the first time we're allowing the public
to
to
come.
to committee meetings.
Then I would definitely wait though, then if you said the public can be there, then I'd wait until you
The
You
issue
scheduled that
is
day.
We have a street closure issue that needs to be handled as soon as possible.
as soon as possible.
And I don't
Well, I
think you
mean,
can wait
there are
another month.
emergency situations, just like you can add something to the agenda
Yeah,
for
the street
emergency situation. You can always, I think,
Meet because of the circumstances.
yes.
Yeah, I don't think it can wait another month. How does anybody else do it?
I don't think it can either, but could you circulate ideas through to each other through email? I mean, that's
Before you meet
nothing.
as a public meeting.
But I think that's less transparent.
It's a catch-22. We have a public resident who's calling us out for the actual timeline and time frame. So unfortunately, the momentum, I mean, keep working individually, but as far as meeting together publicly, we're just gonna have to pause for a moment. I think, I mean, Solicitor, if
I
that's your
agree.
advice.
I totally agree with what you stated, and I'm trying to look up the advertising. I believe it's 24 hours and one time.
Okay. Well,
So to be safe, do we just wait until next week, next Wednesday?
What?
Then it wouldn't be the fourth, then the advertisement would be wrong because it wouldn't be the fourth Wednesday.
Say that again, Vince.
I said, then the advertisement wouldn't be right because it wouldn't be the fourth Wednesday.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
I mean, we could meet on Zoom.
Okay.
No, you can't, 'cause it's a meeting.
But we can't really
You don't get to do
talk, we
anything
can't
until
talk through
next.
email either.
Correct.
So we gotta push back a month and then that's not gonna be going over very well with the public. The Boston is coming up. The street closure thing needs ironed out as soon as possible. It should have been ironed
Well,
out 6 months ago.
you can work on things and talk to each other individually.
just don't meet with a group of 3 or more.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
Do
mean,
your homework, do your due diligence, do, discovery and research. And then
But you
when,
can meet with 3 people also, as long as you're not informed, correct?
correct.
Well, then what? could we do?
Well, then if
Because
that's.
you're calling that committee meeting,
Okay, well, then we'll meet on a.
you're gonna have tea somewhere else.
We'll meet on a.
Yeah.
You're probably- Yeah,
you want to
But
move
not
forward?
as a committee, just
But-
as this, to give the street closure. Figure it out. Everything else can wait. I think the street closure. is-
yeah, I don't disagree with that, but we gotta follow what,
Well, it won't be. yeah,
Solicitor.
We'll talk about it, but we won't.
so.
won't be a committee.
Well, let's move on to the public comments, the remaining ones. Kelly, are you ready?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I'm the one that lives next door to the North Avenue house that was
Yes.
posted.
Can you state your name,
529.
full name and address, please?
Yes, Kelly Rodriguez, 529 North Avenue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, this has been happening for 3 years and it's unacceptable. The solicitor and Dave Recupero both do not answer any emails or our phone calls anymore. We've been reporting this for 3 years. Now, if you guys lived next to this and had trash thrown over your fence that could poison your dog and you had to tackle your dog to get bones out of their mouth, I think you would have a problem. He's now beating on my door, and I don't find this appropriate that the cops, the chief involved too, was told not to charge him. Nobody's being held accountable, and I'm tired of it. I'm actually disgusted with how you guys are treating this. It's not a joke. He was strangled. Do you see the videos? That's the only reason why you guys are helping, because he was strangled. And I posted this because nobody will help us. And that's shameful to this town. Shame on all of you. It's disgusting that I have to live next to this. He was outside in bare feet today for an hour. And Sunday, he banged on my door and you were here 3 times. Do you guys think this is okay? Because I don't. And no charges are being done because the chief is horrible, as the rest of your police officers. They will not press charges. And I have asked them many times. They won't give me a paper trail. I've asked you, Dave. I've asked you, the solicitor. Nobody will give me any answers, and it's exhausting, and I'm tired of it. So now what do you have to say? Because I'd like a response.
Kelly, you did not send me no emails.
Oh, really?
would've
Because I
answered
have
you.
proof of it that all of you got it because I had Trish send it to all of you. So you're lying. My mother text messages you and you don't even answer her anymore. The solicitor, I can prove it to you. In September, I sent him an email. He didn't answer me again. Well, oh wait, I'm sorry. I take the back. He did say he didn't know he had emails. And I said, I have paper trail to show it. And he said he'd look into it just like you do. Because you say the same thing. Every time there's a problem, I'll look into it. You do nothing. And then in November, I messaged him again. And guess what? No answer again. Are we surprised? And I've been down to the office and reported this as well. And guess what? Oh, he'll get back to me. Never happens, does it? Never. Your turn. Nothing. Silence, right? Silence. We don't care about the kid living next door. We want him to be cared for. That is why we're having a problem. Clearly, nobody sees this. Do you look at the reports to see how many times we call the police? You guys won't give us that either. I want the call log. I've demanded it. Nobody will tell us. This is ridiculous. No answers, right? No comments? I'm waiting here, and I have copies of everything. I didn't think so. Thanks for your time.
I believe she's done. We're at 3 minutes.
Yeah, figured.
Okay, 3 minutes, Mrs. Rodriguez comments. We have another person with a raised hand virtually. We had two. It looks like we have one now. We have Kathy M. If you could please state your name and address, please.
Hey, it's Kathy Maddox at 234 Penn Street. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I have two things I want to touch on. Just very quickly, the street closure issue. I'm sympathetic to the business that is, losing business or not, seemingly being able to book anything. But I don't know that we are doing much of anything that we haven't done for decades in the community between the car cruise and the parade. We used to have a 3-day festival, which I think used to close down the street, but I'm not entirely sure about that because that's been a couple years. We have Community Day that is 1 year or 1 day, not, we split that up to, we actually did put half of that up into the Cribs Field this year for the 150th. Botany and Booze is a great event. And I think IGB Intergrove Brewing had a small event this year. I don't think it blocked up the entire street that it normally does, but that's one thing. I'm glad that there's, a process being invoked for filing for that. I certainly don't think council is willy-nilly closing down the street for anything. But my second topic is North Street. I'm totally sympathetic about what they've gone through there for many years now. It's a very frustrating situation. I would like a little bit of clarification about this being a single family home and not a group home. I'm just not quite certain how this residence or property is classified. It's very frustrating. The police are there. I eat on average at least once a day, because sometimes they're there 3 times a day, sometimes they're there once a day, but at least 4 times a week, it seems, from what I know, they are there. And it just seems like it's exhausting public resources, taxpayer resources, first responder resources that, shouldn't be focused on just one residence. It seems like a nuisance, and it does seem like something needs to be done. And I certainly don't put this on council. I think other agencies need to be involved. So is there any advice or somewhere anybody can point people to that are involved in this situation? Because something has to happen here. It's exhausting for the residents and the borough in a whole. This is exhausting for the entire borough. This just shouldn't be the case after 3 years.
Thank you, Kathy. We are at 3 minutes for your public comment. We
Yeah.
thank you.
Do you want me, just to respond to why this is considered a single family dwelling and not a group home? The case that was before the court in 2007 in the Western District of Pennsylvania, they talk about ordinance being facially discriminatory by proxy. And what they mean by that is you're distinguishing between families of group facilities based on the presence of having staff members there. That's the proxy, was the proxy classification, versus individuals just living in a home without having anybody caring for them. And so the court held that you can't distinguish between a person living in a residence that has people coming in around the clock as being a group home, and a person living right across the street or next door in a duplex, the same exact facility or building that doesn't have somebody coming in around the clock. And so the court has said, you have to treat this as a single family dwelling. And so when we look at our zoning ordinance, what does a single family dwelling require? What can we do? And in the area where he lives, there is nothing more council can require of this person. It is now on his family members, his support team, to go out and try to care for him the best way they can. If he's outside doing something inappropriate or something to the neighbors inappropriately, the mechanism for us is to call the police and he gets cited. We'll provide the numbers on the website for Child Protective Services and adult social services. But those are the avenues in which we can go and continue to call on. The municipality cannot take on the burden of this individual. If we do that, we open the door to all others. You can't do that. You don't have the tax base to do that. So again, it's an unfortunate situation, but this is not something a municipality can regulate. This is something that the other family members, I think the community going out and trying to make these calls and report on what is going on there. But according to our investigation, the adult social services were out there and they saw the video and it was unfounded. So, we've done what we're supposed to do. I think we'll continue to report to the appropriate authorities, but that's all we can do.
Thank you.
Up next, we have public comment from Kimberly Roller.
Hi, everyone. This is Kimberly Roller. I live at 853 First Street, and I am the newly appointed president of the Verona Garden Club. I'd like to speak on behalf of Botany and Booze and the Verona Garden Club regarding the street closures for the event that we have submitted applications for May 21st and 22nd. Just to clarify a couple of things, as I understand that there was some conversation and comment made regarding this event being kind of new information. This was first brought to council on the August 10th meeting, and then again on the January 11th meeting where we talked about the updated closure proposal, but the closure itself was brought up on August 10th. So it has been approximately 6 months before the event. And I want to be very clear that the Garden Club does not want to impede Verona businesses in any way. We really want the businesses in Verona to participate in Botany and Booze. We think it's a great promotion for them as well as the borough and great marketing. We encourage any business that's on that street to open their doors, invite people in, say hello, come to the Botany and Booze event and kind of hang out with us. It's a great opportunity for everybody. Additionally, I have worked on the original proposal of the street closure spacing that I talked to council about. And I looked at that and went back to the drawing board as we talked about in that meeting. Our proposal, which was the same proposal as last year, and we were advised that we could not do that for police presence and the way that they had it formatted. But we would propose that the street get closed directly in front of the park and South Avenue to Diamond Way. That would mean the borough parking lot that is next to the borough building that you guys are in right now would be closed. However, the horses that would close the street would be immediately following that. That would close the physical park off. And then again, Railroad Park, East Railroad to Diamond Way. That allows the alleyway to be accessible to those businesses that are on East Railroad. That would allow, in my personal opinion, all the businesses on that street to have the rear entrance available for themselves. And then we would close at the beginning of Miller's parking lot, again, leading Miller's parking lot to be open. So realistically, the closure space that we are asking for is approximately a block and a half. We are not asking for an entire street. We are not asking, again, to impede any Verona business in any way. This should be a very proud community event that we hope that everyone can attend. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kim. Okay, next we have one last virtual hand raised. It is Dan Showalter. Dan, you are unmuted. We can hear you.
Wonderful. Dan Showalter, 440 North Avenue. This is in regards to the house on Upper North. As I heard our solicitor say that legally it looks like we might have hit a brick wall in that particular area. But I would like to say we are fortunate on Lower North that the kids are able to go outside and play a lot, run on the streets, sometimes go later than any of us would like, but the kids down here really do have a run of the street. On Upper North, they do not. They have a situation up there where their kids cannot go outside and play in their yards. The individual, unfortunately, that we are talking about is a rather large guy. He probably stands about maybe 6'2", 250. And the caregivers do not monitor him very well at all. To say that the police are up there on a regular basis would be an understatement. And unfortunately, they have stopped taking reports a while ago. There is no paper trail to run down nowadays because the police just show up, say there's nothing they can do, and drive off. For myself to be saying something like this, I'm a back the blue guy to the hilt, and I make no apologies about it. But when somebody like myself has thrown up their hands and say our police are just not doing their job, then you've lost the community at large. I'm sorry, but at this point, our police force, and not all of our officers, but a nice chunk of our police have lost the respect that they have for police officers. And some change needs to be made to get the respect back. There's no reason that the kids on Lower North can run around like they do, and the kids on Upper North have to shelter inside their house because they're afraid that maybe something might happen, and their parents have to monitor them the second they walk out that front door. So please, folks, you guys have the power to make changes on that police force, and pushback from the community would not happen. So it's really in your guys' hands. What is the next course and decision you want to make? Because calling the police now at this point almost feels like a waste of time. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Thank you. We have no other hands raised virtually. So I think it's end of public comment.
All right, at this time, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
First by Mr. Suchovich. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Flota. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.